Call this meeting to order, the Hartford Selectboard on Tuesday, September 7th at 6 p.m. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Any volunteers? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Now we will close this meeting as the Hartford Select Board and open as the local liquor control board. We have a renewal and change of location. Guatang Restaurant doing business as the China Moon Buffet. So there's information in your packet. Any questions or discussion on this?
I'd like to recuse myself.
Sure.
I have just one question. Because they changed the location, are they supposed to be here?
No, Elisa checked with the state, the town clerk checked with the state and made sure that was okay. So they don't need to be here. That's all. She's done that process on the back end there. So everything's up to speed.
That was the only question I had. Thank you.
Good question.
Dan, the first class, that's just beer and wine.
First class is it's retail, like a restaurant. So
okay.
Second class is like a store.
Yeah.
So they could potentially they can sell hard alcohol as well as drinks.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to move that we approve renewal and change of location for Hung Ten Restaurant doing business as China Moon Buffet, CKA 96 Sykes Avenue, White River Junction, Vermont 05001, first class.
And is there a second?
Second.
Second by Joe. Any other discussion or comments? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. So that was Allie who's saying aye, who's joining us on Zoom. And I will abstain, and Kim has recused herself. So motion carries. Thank you. Get all that, Lana? Thank you. Okay. Now we'll close this portion of the meeting as the local liquor control board and reopen as the Hartford Select Board. Next up is order of agenda. Any comments or questions there? Anything you want to change? Okay. Next, we will go to public comment. So things that are not on the agenda that you wish to discuss. If you would like to speak, please come up to the microphone, state your name, your town of residence. You have 3 minutes to discuss things, and we ask for no personal attacks. Anyone's interested, step on up. Hi, Kim, do we have anyone on call that wants public comment?
We do not.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Oh, wait.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
No, you can go ahead.
No. Checking to see if anyone on the Zoom call had.
Hey, my name is Wayne Kendall. I'm a Hartford resident, been here all my life. I got a concerning phone call Friday afternoon from a business owner in reference to Simon Dennis installing his little huts or sheds for homeless people. I was under the assumption that they had stopped that, told him not to do it any longer. Why is he being allowed to do this and be on the ad hoc committee and not have permits?
To the best of my knowledge, I do not know that he is doing that. I have not heard that that's happening. I don't know the details on that, but yes, he has been asked to stop doing that. So no one has officially brought it to me. I don't know if anyone's brought it to the town manager if anything's happening.
Where are we talking about, so that way I can, because this is where it gets confusing, is that, we only have control over like town property. So that's kind of the first delineation that I'm trying to figure out where it is, so that way we can make sure it is. And if it's on somebody's property, then we'll have to kind of go forth with zoning to see if it's elevated to the rise of needing a permit.
I have to get a permit to build a doghouse on my property if I'm correct. I know I have to get a permit to build a shed. These structures are the size of the shed that I have permitted on my property that I get taxed on. It's over on the end of A Street by Evergreen. There's a green one sitting there, and a geodome that was brought in and assembled Friday by Dennis and a couple of his friends. There's a third one sitting out on Route 14, just past the church, over the bank.
So, okay. I think that the health officer is aware of some of these issues. He sent me a bunch of emails. If I'm looking at my emails correctly, these are not on town property. They're on other people's property. So what I can do is look into whether they do have proper permitting. So that would be me going to like Joanne Olive and Lori and planning and development to make sure that they have permitting.
Okay, 2 up on A Street are actually within the railroad right of way. I
Okay.
was over there Sunday. When they got removed from Prospect Street, they were given no trespass order because of the railway.
Okay.
They're right back in there again.
Okay.
So what's going to be done about this? My concern is somebody gets hurt, whose insurance pays for it? I'm a taxpayer. I don't want the town's insurance to go up. I'm sure nobody in town does.
Yeah, go ahead.
The concern I think that we need to have here is that if Mr. Dennis is involved with this, he's a member of a committee that's a subcommittee of the select board. And as such, if he's acting as a member of the subcommittee putting these up, are we liable then in terms of the cleanup again because of him being involved in this, acting as a committee member? I'm just afraid that the fact that we did have to pay for cleanup on 8th Street and Prospect Street and downtown. And because he's a committee member, are we going to be forced with having to pay for this again because he's acting as a member of that committee?
Well, I don't know if he's acting as a member of the committee. He's on the committee, but that might be a good distinguish. We might need to distinguish that. But yes, he's. I mean, I'm not sure if he is acting as a member of the committee. I wouldn't assume so, but we can explore that. Kim.
I mean, the town did take responsibility to pay for that cleanup as a public safety measure, but it wasn't because of a member of the committee. Like if Simon were not on that committee, the town probably would have done that cleanup anyway. So I don't think that's a direct result. If you want to expel someone from a committee because of behavior or something like that, that's one consideration. But I don't think that having Simon on the committee was directly related to the town deciding to pay for the cleanup.
Yeah, it was becoming a public health hazard that just needed to be remediated.
Sir?
Yes.
I'm very concerned about this because I want to make sure that the town is not going to have liability in that. Because there's already needles and such that are down off of A Street complex. And if we have to be forced in a situation where we're going to have to do town cleanup again, it's something we really should look into from a legal standpoint. And if that means that, as Kim said, maybe, getting Mr. Dennis off of that committee if the committee is responsible for this action, that sets a really bad precedent for this town. If you're having committee members put start homeless encampments within the town. I mean, we have a homeless encampment policy that we're supposed to be following, and to have members of committees within the town violating that policy is not a very good thing.
I think there's several issues here. I mean, first of all, I don't think it's fair to accuse someone of doing something if we don't have the facts. That's one thing. So I think we need to be careful about that. Please let me finish and then I'll call on you. And I think we can explore that. But there have been other situations under the bridge right out here that had needles and stuff that had to be cleaned up for that very reason. It had nothing to do, it was pre this whole homeless committee. So the town has continued to do that. The bigger issue here that this is pointing to is where in our town are these people that are residents of our town, where can they safely be? That's the problem. And this is what is getting pushed to the top here and around the country. These people need a place to live, and we're not providing that. So we need to come up with a solution, which is the purpose of the committee. That, they're getting shuffled from one place to another place, but they're not leaving. They're part of our town. They're part of our community, and we need to come up with a solution that works for them. That's the bottom line. Go ahead.
I agree with you. I also own 103 acres of land in West Fairway. I approached Simon last fall, told him, you want to build your shelters? I'll donate my land. Put as many shelters up there as you want. It's 103 acres, 18 acres of beautiful field. No, we're not going to do that.
It's very generous, but we have to remember that a lot of these individuals rely on public transportation, which only runs Monday through Friday. They don't have vehicles. So there's a lot of other things to consider. And there's not probably out there, it's very rural, so there's not a lot of amenities for them to get to. And that's part of the issue, is finding that balance where they can access the services that they need to get to. So if we could convince, advanced transit to run up there 3 times a day, that would be a perfect solution. But we need to make all the parties come to the table and come up with something that works. But that's very generous of you. Thank you.
And I understand that. It's the fact that we're skirting around the ordinances, not getting permits, proper permits.
So that's what we'll check on, yeah, and see.
I have video of this, and I'd like to have this up on the screen for people to see. My name is Heidi Detail.
Heidi and I walked in Sunday afternoon. The gentleman there, 45-minute tutorial. Everything Simon's done, everything they're doing, opened the geodome, showed us. In this video, it states this young gentleman was the guinea pig for Simon's geodome, and it almost killed him because he had carbon monoxide poisoning. And it states it in this video that Simon's the one that put him in. He had this gentleman as the guinea pig with a heater in the place. And
Propane heater.
3 times throughout the night, he had to get out of it because he couldn't breathe. He was getting dizzy. Somebody opens that up, finds a dead body in there in the morning. Who's on the line for that?
Right,
We all are now.
exactly
because
right.
we all are aware of this.
Exactly.
Every single person is going to be aware of this, the entire town.
I'm sorry, ma'am. And you can speak. If you just say your name and where you're
Heidi
from.
Detail,
And where you're from.
White River Junction.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
So,
Just for the record.
yeah.
Yes.
So I don't know how to actually get that into this meeting minute thing here, how to make it work or whatever.
I can put it
So,
on video.
so,
I've sent this
Yeah.
to members of your town select board meeting already.
okay, 1 second. Kim?
Couple things.
Yeah.
One, there is, Ally has her hand raised on Zoom. 2, I think that might be more of a request for a public comment section of an agenda that, I think if this is something you want to share during a select board meeting, it should be requested to be on a subsequent agenda. Would you agree? I mean, this is a whole item in itself, and I don't think we should add to the agenda a whole section during public comment. And I don't know if you sent it to all select board members. I don't think I
No.
got, okay.
Yeah, I don't think I got it.
Selected
Oh, selected, gotcha.
Yeah.
people that I thought would actually take action upon it.
Can you speak into the mic?
My name's Heidi Dute. I live in White River Junction. I've lived here for 48 years of my actual life. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I care for the lives of these homeless people. I'm not doing this to seek problems. I'm doing this to protect the homeless. I want this publicized because I want them protected and taken care of in the right manner. The shelters that are being put out there right now are not safe. They're going to kill these people, and every single one of the Hartford residents are going to be held liable. Do you want a dead homeless person on your conscience? I don't. I walked into these encampments on Sunday. I have video. I've spoken to these people. I can't let this go. I cannot personally let this go. I have helped homeless people. I continue to help homeless people. I can't, with my conscience, I cannot let this go. And I hope that you people stop Simon Dennis from doing this, because he's continuing to do this. These shelters were deemed unsafe last year by you people, and he's continuing to build them. He's continuing to put them out there. We now know, and I have video, if you would let me show the people these videos. They are not safe, and he's having them use propane heaters inside these unsafe, unfit shelters. I'm bringing it to you. I'm bringing you proof. These people have spoken on this video. They're saying his name. Simon is not in this video, but they are saying his name.
Great, thank you for bringing that to us. I think Kim has a good point. We need to bring that as a select board
And
item.
he's standing on one of our committees.
He is, yes. And
He
so
needs to be
is-
removed from this committee.
Excuse me. And so is Tom Pellier from the fire department to make sure that this committee has housing that is safe. And as we know, the health officer is involved. We now have town manager involved who will look at planning and zoning. There's a process we have to go through for this, especially if it's not on town land. So I think we need to bring Ally in next if we can as the representative to that subcommittee, if we could, please.
So Dave, is now an okay time to bring in Ally? She's a panelist. Oh, wait, she may have lowered her hand.
While Kim's working on that, if we're gonna have video, is it possible to turn this on or should I sit out here?
I don't think we can have video, Dennis, because this is going to be an agenda item which we haven't warned and discussed.
No, if Ally's
What he's
coming on.
saying is just having the TV.
Oh, gotcha. Yes, sorry.
I just lost.
Can you bring Brett in this conversation?
You know what?
Can you bring Brett in this conversation?
If Brett would like to make a comment, he's welcome to come up and discuss it.
As a health officer.
Yeah. If he wants to speak, he's welcome to.
I think the health officer doesn't he have a separate item?
Yeah, he does.
Tonight, a presentation.
He does.
Does it make more sense to do that?
I don't know if you wanted to speak on this topic.
He's an adult. He's in the room. If he'd like to speak, he's welcome to come up. So it's fine. Mike, go ahead.
So this item, this issue's been brought to my attention and I think it's, serious. I share Lanny's concerns. I share concerns that the committee is not going to be, considered particularly trustworthy if we believe that one member of the committee is responsible for putting up these structures. I think there's a lot that we need to find out. That's why I think it should be an agenda item because we'll want to hear from concerned citizens like we did tonight. We'll want to hear from the health officer. We'll want to hear from the fire chief probably. Mr. Dennis may want to appear as well. I just don't think we can do it tonight, the kind of service it needs. And if we just pass through it tonight, people are going to say we just punted it, So I think if we can have an opportunity for everyone to come in and discuss, and invite the people we think are necessary. I think that makes more sense than bringing it up right now, although I certainly understand the passion behind the comments and I understand the need for people to speak out.
Exactly. I hear that too. And last winter, there were actually, I think, 5 homeless people that I'm aware of that did pass away that did not have shelter. So it's not something that hasn't happened, unfortunately, in town before. So again, people are trying to do what they can, I think, to move things forward and make it better. But if it's a dangerous situation, we don't want them living in that kind of environment. So we'll put this on as an agenda item maybe in the future. I don't know how soon we can get to it, but whatever. Is Ally ready to come on?
So I think Ally's ready to come on. And I would also just like to add the comment that I attended a memorial service in May for 4 unhoused community members that were unsheltered. It's clearly an issue and people are already dying in our town who are unhoused.
So Ally, are you there?
Yep, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Great. I do agree that to see the video and to have further discussion on this would be great to put on the next agenda. And I just want to, from an emergency shelter committee perspective, just say that those geodomes, if those are indeed happening, are not something that we have discussed as a committee or supported or planned as a committee. And so if this, sometimes I think the line, and I honestly need to learn more about where the line is between sort of like individual citizen action versus when are you part of the committee and doing those actions. Again, I think we need more information, of course, around all of this, but I just wanted to confirm that that's not something that the Emergency Shelter Committee is working on or making any plans around, but clearly we need some more information.
Thanks, Ally. Yeah, go ahead.
If you're going,
I think it's on, yeah.
Can you hear our community member at the big mic, y'all? Sorry, that much movement leads me to believe that you've got something going on.
Can you
Just tap it or something or see if it's.
you said that it had to be on an agenda and it needed to be on a later date. Are you going to leave these people in these sheds?
We are pursuing the proper channels, which involves the health officer, involves zoning if it's not town land, and whoever else needs to be involved. So you brought it to attention, and things don't happen instantly. It has to follow the proper channels to make it happen. So the parties involved now are aware of that, and they, I think, maybe have already been aware of that. So we will follow up on that when we get more information.
He has him on his land also. He has people in him on his land also.
Okay.
And I think they're still up on Hurricane Hill.
Okay, well, we'll check it out, and once we find some more information, we'll address it in the proper way based on the zoning and rules that we have in town.
I just don't want these people dying
None of us do.
in these shelters. I'm not saying not to help them. I'm just saying not to do it in this manner.
We hear you. Thank you. We appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you.
People in him on his land also. And I think they're still up on Hurricane Hill.
We have a little, would you all, so the next meeting for the select board is the 21st. It's technically a listening session on our first responders, so police, fire, and dispatch. If you want, what we can do is kind of shorten that a little bit and have room for this as a second agenda item. Otherwise, we're going into October 5th, which is also the first review of the budget.
I think the next meeting would be good, and we might be able to have the angle from that department on how they handle the homeless situation and when they encounter these and what their role is in that process that kind of ties the two together. That might be helpful for all of us to understand.
Okay, I'm seeing some general nods, so the 21st, we'll go ahead and do that.
Yeah,
Okay.
sounds good.
Awesome.
Thank you. All right. Other questions or comments in the public?
There is one more hand raised
Yeah.
that just went up. Can you bring Mike Morris over, Dave?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate you calling me. I wanted to give a shout out if I could. Dan, you know, you were there at the meeting last Wednesday night to purge the voter list, and it was quite a to-do. And you were one of the ones that read off a lot of names. Thank you very much. But I thought we really need to give a shout out to Lisa, if we could. She's been working alone a lot, and to handle this and the way she did, I wanted to congratulate her on it publicly.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike. We appreciate that. And obviously Lisa's work as she purges the checklist here in the proper procedure. Thank you.
And one other thing, if I could just ask about, is there any more update on Fairview Terrace? The last I knew, the street is still open, even though we'd had a meeting where some people were very fearful, even the fact of losing sleep at night, that the wall was going to fall down, someone get hurt. Is there anything updated as to when they are going to close it, or have they changed their mind? I haven't heard anything.
I think the town manager has an update for you right now.
Yeah, I'm
Thank you.
looking at the last update that I sent out to the chair and the vice chair are still waiting for signs. I'm sure any of us that have tried to buy things from stores or are working in businesses where we get supplies, or if you've been to Home Depot in the last couple of months, we all know it's bad. The signs are on order. Once we get those in, we will have to do dig safe to make sure that we aren't planting those signs over anything that we're not supposed to be doing that. And then they will go in and we will start warning that transition. But we're not going to warn the transition until we actually have the signs in hand due to the rampant supply chain restraints that we continue to all wrestle with.
Thank you, Tracy. Thanks, Mike. Anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. That's it, Kim? Great, thanks. Okay, select board comments and announcements.
Yes, sir.
Danny, go ahead.
Hey, as most of you know, this is the 20th anniversary of 9/11. And as such, I personally would like to ask for a moment of silence for all the lives that were lost as a result of 9/11. So if we could do that, just a small moment of silence, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Good idea. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Are we done?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Thanks. I would just like to do a little protocol around our hybrid meetings. I don't know if Dan may have something to add, but I think what we've decided to do is when we have a topic on the agenda, if there's discussion from the select board typically, and then we welcome public comments, And what we've decided to do is take those comments first from people in the room, and then I'm checking the Zoom raised hands to see if there are other comments or questions from members of the public joining us by Zoom. And so I guess I'm just trying to ask the folks on Zoom to be patient. Sometimes there's long discussions and we can't get to you until the discussion has gotten to that part of the process. And I don't know if the chat is enabled or not enabled, but I am not looking at the chat. I don't know if anyone else is, but if you're trying to communicate with me, it is not going to be, I'm not reading the chat during the meeting. So I just wanted to clarify that for folks joining by Zoom. Be patient, raise your hand, and we will definitely get to you.
Thanks, Kim. Yeah, so pre-COVID, we didn't have live call-in. You had to watch it. So we added that feature as something that residents requested. And the chat feature is basically having a second meeting going on while we're in this room and other people are on the chat. So we have asked to have the chat feature disabled because it's too distracting and people are having conversations about things that we don't even know is going on. And there are comments that are being made that are inappropriate that we wouldn't allow in the public session. So therefore they shouldn't be going on in a dual meeting at the same time. So that's our thinking at this time, and we'll go from there. Yeah, but thank you.
So if we could
be disabled for the
next
future,
meeting, or
just so we have one meeting where everyone has the same information, I think it's helpful. Thank you. Thanks, Kim. Dennis, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Recently, I went to First Friday the other night, and there was a pretty good crowd down there. And while I was down there, I noticed some new signs that have popped up along the sidewalk, some sort of temporary plastic cardboard signs that say additional parking in the court, in the Vermont Court complex on evenings and weekends. And so I was surprised to see those, and because I'd asked about this sort of thing before and was led to believe that it was not possible. So I don't know what happened there, but even more confusing at the court building, the signs that have always been up about court use only and only parking for court use are there. And so they're confusing. I'm not sure, I had written to the manager and the chair and vice chair about this, but I'm hoping to learn more about this. I mean, I hope it can, it opens the door to being able to park there, but it's confusing because, like I said, the signs say you can park there till you get there, and then the signs at the court say court use only again. And so I'm hoping for more info on that.
I don't remember the specific details, Dennis, but I know somewhere over the past year that someone reached out to the court and said it was allowed to park there nights and weekends to help alleviate the parking problem downtown, but they're not going to change their signs that are there all the time just on nights and weekends. So their signs still say, please do not park there because of their business hours during the week. But I don't remember the specific arrangements, but someone had reached out to them and made that deal.
And I put the signs out.
Yeah.
Full disclosure.
Okay.
And they basically said that we could park it, but they're not endorsing that. So that's where we are, and worked with the Chamber of Commerce to get the signs made to alleviate some of the parking during that time.
Well, I think this is great. Could we put some of those signs at the court building? Because as I said, you get thinking if you're driving around town and say, oh, these spaces are full, I can park at the court. And then you get over there, it says court use only. It seems like it would be complimentary if the sign, or reassuring once you got to the court building to have those signs there saying you can park there.
Well, until this meeting, it was supposed to be kind of on the down low. I can reach out to them.
Very well. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Dennis. Okay.
Dave, can you move Mike Morris back over to me? Is Mike Morris still on as a panelist?
Yeah, do you want to hear the real estate?
Will he still? Mike, if you have your hand up but don't have another question, can you put it down?
Okay.
For
Thank
those
you.
of you not on Zoom, he
put his hand up. Thank you.
All right, any other select board comments? Okay. So this evening, we have no appointments. So we'll move over to the town manager's report and significant activities report.
Awesome. Well, like I wrote in my town manager's report, much of my office's work in the past 2 weeks is reflected in tonight's agenda. But we have 3 different things that have been going on. We're very excited to welcome Dana Clausen to the team as our new environmental sustainability coordinator. He's coming up from Somerville, Massachusetts. And I think he's going to be a great addition to the team. He has some really great practical knowledge in terms of energy audits, understanding of HVAC systems, all those technical things that quite honestly, I don't totally understand at times. And then I think he is going to be really great at community work and getting out and connecting to all of the different stakeholders that we have. And one of the things I really enjoyed about interviewing and speaking with Dana as I've gotten to know him is he's very practical as well. So he often has spoken with me about balancing the wants and the needs and the time constraints and the money constraints that everybody in local government is used to dealing with. So I'm pretty excited he's going to be here. He starts officially at the beginning of October. As he moves his family up here. And for those of us who have moved up here recently, I'm sending him all the good wishes to find housing. We're starting winter preparation. I know that seems kind of wild that, here we are, beginning of September. But we are starting to look at different areas of sidewalk and road that are difficult to maintain in safe conditions. So as you see in my report, one area that I've learned has been a long concern is the sidewalk on Quechee Main Road. Our beautiful waterfall creates mist that freezes once it's below and just causes a never-ending sheen of ice on that sidewalk. We've had a lot of slips and falls in the area. We've tried a lot of different things, both to try to reduce the ice, to mitigate warning signs. We continue to have some issues with people slipping and falling. And our insurance carrier advised us that we should close that sidewalk once it's consistently below freezing and we're unable to maintain it in a good condition. That it's something that just we cannot keep up with. And it's really common when you have a misting water feature in an area that creates a fine ice mist. So it's unfortunate, but I've asked Public Works to start that process and know when that's going to happen and when we're going to need to ask people to not ice skate across that section of sidewalk. We're going to try to make it as small as possible while also keeping people safe. And we're going to continue to monitor other roads and sidewalks that need additional service or that we just have other outside mitigating environmental circumstances that mean we can't keep it bare and wet, which is what you want your sidewalks to be. And we had a Gate Street update in my town manager's report. So, that's pretty exciting that they're still on, we have that up there. There's no, they're on back order and there's no estimate when that order is going to be filled. We do have, we've completed a proposal process for a water resource consultant. And those are the folks that are going to tell us about the water line underneath, what that would look like, what needs to happen, if we could move it, if we should move it. On Friday, Public Works was finishing up a formal recommendation for my approval to engage with that bidder. It's below y'all's threshold, so I can say that. Significant activities, you'll see that we continue to do a lot of work across all the city departments. We're saying goodbye to our police social worker, and we are actively working to get a new one. Again, labor constraints means we are crossing all of our fingers and all of our toes to find someone to take Whitney's place. She's been an invaluable member of the team. But our police department and HCRS are working actively to get us a new social worker.
Yes, go ahead.
Can I just ask a question about that?
Yeah.
What is the current status of the wellness coordinator, not wellness coordinator, but through HCRS? What is the current status there?
The peer support advocate.
Yes.
And that's a half-time position. Shoes on the ground with us, half-time with HCRS. It made it a little bit more cost-effective for both of us. They are in final rounds of interviewing. And I was able to meet with one of their final candidates last week, I believe. They're hoping to have that all secured within the next week and have that person on the payroll and starting to do work.
So is that person going to be doing the tasks that were being done by Whitney? Is that?
No, those are two different roles. Whitney is a social worker, so she has different authorities and roles and responsibilities and different access to different services and getting people into those services. This would be, the peer support advocate is really guided towards those that are maybe a little less open to working with people who have positions of authority, who might be, have difficulty engaging with police or fire or a social worker because they do have responsibilities and they can come at them from a perception of authority and responsibility. This person would help people get help themselves. So that could look like helping them kind of take that first step to getting food stamps or getting into a shelter situation or helping them fill out forms if they are intimidated by public forms. One of the other things they're going to do for all of us is help those of us who are out in the community understand how to communicate with those who might be needing a little extra support. So if you see someone, you're getting to know them and you hear that they might need something, you getting the skills to be able to interact with that person. So also helping police, fire, other first responders, even our public works team, be able to reach out and communicate with those people who maybe need a little help, taking that first step to getting help themselves.
Good. Anything else?
No, we've got a full agenda, so I want to step back and let us get the party started. If y'all have any other questions, though, I'm happy to entertain them, or if there's something in the significant activities that you.
Okay.
All right.
Well, let's go to board reports and we'll start with a cemetery update.
That's me. All right, everyone. So it's been about 2 months since we took over the Christian Street Cemetery. Just so y'all are on the same page, technically you all took over the Christian Street Cemetery. When a deacon or sexton chooses to retire, state requires that the select board, the town themselves, take it on. So what I did when I came in was look back at the 2018 Cemetery Committee report, and that examined both the historic, which is the closed cemeteries, and the active cemeteries. So that's kind of how we're going to differentiate. And we know that we have a lot of work to do with the historic cemeteries in terms of maintenance and restoration, but we're going to kind of table that for this memo and really talk about the operational needs of the active cemetery that we all took responsibility for 2 months and 6 days ago. Now, Dennis brought this up to me the last time. Everybody I know calls it the Christian Street Cemetery, but it's not actually technically on Christian Street. And I think that is lost to the sands of time. We've casually asked around a little bit how to get its name. We're going to have to figure that out a little bit more.
It does on GPS.
You're not up to your mic, my friend.
Oh, sorry. On GPS, it shows as Christian Street. Like when you come off of Christian Street onto Route 5, it says take a left onto Christian Street. So there must be some historical rationale.
But so really there are 3 areas of work that has to be done with the cemetery. Records administration. We did receive electronic spreadsheets of the owners of each of the plots, the location, and who is buried there. The owner can be different than the person that's buried there. Those records were taken from the infamous window shades, and we have not cross-checked those, but we believe that they're accurate. So someone took the window shades, turned them into an Excel spreadsheet. Best practices would say that somebody else who didn't do that work goes back and looks at the window shades and crosses them back with the Excel spreadsheet. But that's where we're at. We have an Excel spreadsheet. We should also consider that we don't really know. The window shades are great and the Excel spreadsheet is great, but we're not exactly sure that the records have been kept to the level that they should have been kept. They've been handed down over time. And we've done the best job that we can, but there could be inaccuracies. They could be incomplete or inaccurate. So one of the things that I and my staff have been talking about as we've been discussing this is we may need to contract with a company that does ground penetrating sonar assessments to identify plots with unmarked or inaccurately marked graves. This is common. Shout out to my father-in-law who manages the historic cemeteries in Cambridge, Massachusetts. He recently had to do this because they realized that their records were likely incomplete and inaccurate. They didn't know exactly where everyone was buried and exactly where everyone wasn't buried. That's definitely something that we want to hold in our hands over here. We also know that plot owners can bury more than one urn in a plot. So we need to know where exactly those urns are buried. The newer records are okay. The older records aren't great. We all would assume that maybe you start from the upper left-hand corner and put them in like that. It appears that when you go back in time, that was not the case. So that's where when we talk about inaccurate or incomplete, that's kind of what I'm talking about. Dennis has his hand up.
Oh, Dennis, go ahead.
No. Yeah.
Thank you. As far as IDing the lots, I know my family has a lot in Queeching. We have a deed for it that spells out just what it is, where it is, and whatnot. So I don't know if we have that deed information for that cemetery. If we did, that might help solve some of that mystery.
We have some of it. Hannah, do you know if we have all of it? Hannah's inherited this now partially too. You know.
So I know that some of them throughout history have been appropriately recorded with the town clerk's office. It's also my understanding from the past cemetery administration at some point in time that there was a fire in somebody's house who held on to the records. And so some of those are, you know, no longer with us. So kind of, you know, what has been turned over to us is really what we have. And without, you know, taking a deep dive into Lisa's office and all of those records, we wouldn't really know what's been recorded, which some people may never have recorded their plot deed. And then it's all out my car. I don't have it with me, but then, you know, those are referencing like a numbering system. The plot deeds are referencing a number system that seem to be slightly arbitrary. You know, so there may be some inaccuracies or changing over time of what different administrations and boards who manage that cemetery sold and how they named those.
We're also finding that not everyone keeps their deeds in good places. So we've already gotten calls. We have inter-family disagreements on how many plots and who's allowed what plots and who's buried in what plots. We have missing deeds, and, you know, like Hannah's saying, Lisa keeps great records, but we get what we inherit. So thank you for keeping your paperwork up to date, Dennis. We all appreciate that, because some of these are like,
It's sketchy.
some of these are like Nancy Drew mysteries of where everything is going in. One of the things I said is we could ask volunteers to perform cross checks initially, but coordinating volunteers and maintaining those records, that could kind of blow up in our face in terms of time and effort, in terms of making sure that everybody knows what they're doing, building a program so we can put expectations on our volunteers and so they can understand that process. Another option, and this is one that I'm leaning towards at this point, is to contract with a data solutions vendor. This is what South Burlington did, and a couple of other towns who inherited cemeteries realized that they had inherited a variety of records, and really needed to understand that. So that is an organization that specifically works with cemeteries to take all of your paperwork, your window shades, your index cards, your Excel spreadsheets, put them into a database, map them, figure out where your holes are, and then offer that up to staff. And they do offer a public portal, so you could go in and see what was where, what was available, and see where your holes are in terms of where you know it. This is something that we could use in the future with the historic cemeteries, which probably are also poorly mapped, just for people's reference and their historic information about where their family's buried. And as we gain more cemeteries, which will happen, we're able to do this with a smaller cemetery like Christian Street rather than the larger cemeteries that have more active spaces. So that's kind of where we're at with records administration and where the kind of holes are. General administration, since we've taken over Christian Street on July 1st, we get about 1 to 2 calls a week from individuals wanting to buy plots, schedule a burial, general questions about plot ownership. I think that it works for now to have my office field those calls initially, because someone knows that generally on Monday through Friday from 8 to 5, someone is there to field your calls. We might not have the answer immediately, but you'll get a person on the phone and we'll be able to answer that. I heard from some of the other towns that it can be really difficult if you have a part-time person that is constantly getting voicemails left for them and then trying to play contact. I think that can reside in my office going forward if we have really strong processes, we have a good data solution, we know what we're doing, and we have a good binder, an electronic binder that says, this is what you do when somebody calls about this, and we know who's doing what. Right now, a lot of time is taken up with us trying to find answers, calling the people who used to do this before, calling in favors to other towns. What do you all do? Calling in Hannah's team to go down to the cemetery and do walkthroughs with various people. And I think that it's a kind service to pay forward for residents and people who might be having a rough go. If you're calling us about burial situations, it's been a rough go, and I think it would be nice to have a kind voice on the other end of the line. One of the things that's happened historically before is Henry was more than happy to go out and tour the cemetery with folks who wanted to buy a plot. Thank you, Henry, if you're listening. I really appreciate it. I don't know that that's something that my staff will ever have capacity to do on a short-term notice. We're not going to be able to say, oh, we'll be there at 2 or how's tomorrow. One of the things we could consider is that could be a volunteer position where, you know, somebody could be there once or twice a month during a set time. And if you wanted to walk the cemetery with someone who had knowledge of the map and knowledge of the process, you could go out and do that walk. Also, the cemetery is open to the public. So that's definitely something that we need to think about, is helping people who might want to actually get out there and walk the land with someone with knowledge. How are we all doing? It's a lot.
Couple more questions.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
So I think I know the answer to this. But so I was wondering about endowment, but I'm assuming the endowment's used up or we wouldn't have inherited this.
We did get some endowed funds, but like everything, how far we thought $150 was going to go 50 years ago isn't really doing the job these days. So it's not a ton of money. I think I couldn't look it up this afternoon. I got waylaid with something that had a deadline, but it's under $20,000 is the check that was turned over to us. So that's going to go fast.
And is that set? Is there guidelines on that? Like that has to be used for that cemetery, or you know?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Is that each one of these lives with its own separate perpetual care. If we inherit more than one cemetery coming up, that's something that we might want to tease out a little bit, is to find out what exactly that hard line is in terms of where the money can be used.
Yeah, and lastly, you mentioned about figuring out who's where in these lots. And something I learned when I was on the cemetery, the liaison to the cemetery committee, is apparently that in some cases we're experiencing night burials. People that want to avoid going through the system, so they just go up with their urn and they just put somebody in where they want. So that's going to be even harder to, if you trip over that, to account for it. So.
Yeah, Henry gave us a stick that he uses to poke down and see if anything is, did he give you the stick or did he keep the stick, Hannah?
He kept his own stick.
Okay.
I mean, ultimately, the goal is that we at least know where there's something in the ground. So while we are excavating, we don't
You're serious.
run into any.
Yes, yeah, yeah, that's because he was aware that people were illegally burying urns in their family plots.
And they find locations of caskets of the cases. That's how they find them, poking holes in the ground.
Kim.
And there's restrictions to that endowment, right? Like, well, oh, sorry.
No, I'm still on the stick. So
Its expression.
Yeah. So it's my understanding that, and I don't fully, that some of the money goes towards perpetual care, like stone restoration and items like that. And that some of it is for, more like annual maintenance, like mowing or tree trimming and stuff like that. So I believe it's written into those funds, how it has to be divvied out. I don't know specifically with this one.
Thank you. I definitely remember that. And so Tracy, do you think you'll, in the town manager budget proposal, will include this data solutions?
I think we're going that way, and I think better to be prepared and start off early than to inherit more and more active cemeteries and just feel overwhelmed by the sheer number. I'd rather have us get this all figured out with Christian Street and have a process in place as soon as possible. In fact, even today, I just was thinking I might need to see if we can move some stuff around for the FY22 budget this current year and just see how much ballpark this all might process.
Good. Thanks. Joe, go ahead.
The one thing that I'm, I guess, right now a little concerned about is the actual operation of the cemeteries, i.e. if someone calls in and wants to be buried there. I know you were joking, but it's you and Lana right now that are about to go dig the holes. I'm concerned is what I'm saying. And do we have any kind of plan? Particularly since I know for a fact at least one more cemetery is going to come on board sooner rather than later.
Yeah, you can smell it in the air, like you can smell rain coming, can't you? Yeah. Yeah, that's where the hole is. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That was a little, I did not mean that like that. That's where we just can't seem to figure it out. Regular maintenance, we have active contracts. We can continue to contract with those people. There's some hiccups there on whether they want to get involved with the town because that's a lot harder in terms of, we need paperwork. We need to get you listed as a vendor. We can't just cut you a check out of the checkbook. But that's where the sticky situation is.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. You still have the floor, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Lanny. The contractor that you were going to get to fix the records, do they do operations as well, or are they strictly on the okay?
They don't. There's simply a data management solution.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. So unfortunately, I just went through a burial. My mother passed away. So Knight's Funeral Home does have someone that does do graves, digging of graves. So, and they have levers to pull versus you guys going out there with a shovel. So if you contact the actual Funeral Homes. They can help you out in that aspect of perhaps in the past, they have had somebody set up to do due to the actual excavation work within the Christian Street Cemetery. Knight's Funeral Home would be a perfect person to contact in regards to that.
Jeff has been great. Shout out to Jeff if he's watching too. He's come by and had coffee with me a couple of times and helped with that. But just this weekend, we had a burial, and Hannah, can you tell the folks a little bit about how we ended up managing that without much of a process?
So how it's been managed historically, and Jeremy and I spent quite a bit of time with Henry last week, is historically urn burials have been dug by hand by Henry. So that is probably something that our staff will take over and did do on Saturday. Thank you, Jeremy and Chip Haley. The full casket burials, Henry did pass on the contractor that he typically uses for that. But again, as Tracy mentioned earlier, it's just gets complicated when I have to go through like our vendor process and stuff. We haven't quite had the time to reach out to him and understand if that's a process that he wants to enter into. But we are exploring getting somebody on board that can do that on an on-call basis.
Thank you.
One more question, Tracy. At what point does the town, and maybe this is a crystal ball question, but at what point in the town future with cemeteries do we look at a cemetery commissioner?
Yeah, that was one of the first questions I asked when I got this surprise present when I showed up, and they told me that I was getting a cemetery in 3 months. To back into that, to do the cemetery commission, we don't have it written in the charter in a way to do that. So we got to back up and we got to revise the charter. So let's say that takes us a year. Let's say we're pretty quick on the draw with the charter change and we get that up. Cemetery commissioners are elected. And they have pretty broad fiscal and organizational leeway. So that could be difficult because there's not, they'd be outside of town management and actually outside of your management as well as the select board. So it could be a great thing, or it could mean that we don't have a lot of control over costs or process. So it could be a good thing and it could be a bad thing to have commission. And that's definitely up to you folks and the boards in the future to make that decision. But I have heard from other towns that when they have great cemetery commissioners, it's great. And then either nobody wants to take on that role or they get somebody that isn't good with money, say, and it kind of goes downhill and the board ends up feeling like they're cleaning up that process again.
So do we have to label it cemetery commissioner? Can we label it?
We're thinking on the same page here. I'm kind of wondering if we can get a sexton, if we can get a clerk, if we can get somebody, something like that resides somewhere in the town, with all of those, with all of the protections of the town, right? If you're an employee or a contractor, there's insurance and liability issues. But also allows us to kind of manage the process and the funding.
I would say we bypass a commissioner. Sexton is a great idea to go for. Thank you.
Thank you. In the past, has Hartford done burials in the winter or not? Do we know? No.
This is our first active cemetery.
I mean, but
In the town.
in the town, do we know? So some towns don't allow burials like from November 1st until May 1st. Is that what's
This
hit Hartford?
cemetery has historically been closed, according to Henry, from November sometime to April.
You got to go up to the mic. Sorry.
Heidi Duta from White River. I don't think you can bury when the ground's frozen.
Right. So there's different levels. So some towns do it for depending upon the weather, but some towns have specific rules where from November 1st to May 1st, they don't do it even if it's warm enough to do it. So I was just wondering what our policy had been in the past. That's all. So
We don't have, there is no policy for the Christian Street Cemetery. I believe it was just Henry's judgment as to whether the ground had unfrozen enough to start accommodating burials. But that's definitely something that we could consider, especially if Public Works is taking a little bit more ownership, at least until we get a part-time section on, or, some other sort of function, is that would kind of take the pressure off of them for a prescribed amount of time when they're usually busy with much of maintenance.
Good, thank you. Other questions or comments? All righty, thank you. Now we'll go to Hannah with sidewalk tractor purchase, snow plowing, and South Main Street lighting contracts.
Yeah, they're good. Unless, y'all read my next steps. I'm gonna just keep on keeping on if that's okay with you all. Okay.
All right, good evening. Thanks for having me here. I'm Hannah Tyler. I'm the Director of Public Works. I have Jeremy Delisle, the Assistant Director, with me this evening. And we are here to talk about our sidewalk tractor bid award that was approved in this budget for this cycle. And I'm going to turn it over to Jeremy to tell you all about it.
Good evening, everyone. So we issued an RFP for a new sidewalk tractor for the winter snow removal operations. Our RFP included requests for optional warranty or extended warranties, a dual auger or ribbon style snowblower, a telescoping extended chute, and that's for the snowblower. We received 3 bids, one from Howard P. Fairfield. We got their bid, they gave us a trade allowance of $20,000 and a machine that was $148,900, bringing the total to $128,900. We went with Chadwick Bay Ross, provided us a bid for $148,922 with a trade allowance of $10,000, bringing the total to $138,922. And Tri-County Contractors supplied a bid of $191,694 with a trade allowance of $22,110, bringing the total to $169,584. While the bid from Chadwick Bay Ross is $12,043 higher than the lowest bidder, Chadwick Bay Ross provided a bid for a tracked municipal snow removal tractor that is highly recommended by other municipalities for its reliability and snow clearing abilities compared to trackless. And our recommendation is to authorize the Department of Public Works to purchase the new Prinoth SW50 sidewalk tractor from Chadwick Bay Ross with the optional snowblower, extended chute, and 5-year warranty for the total cost of $171,372.
Thank you.
Any questions?
I have a question. Did the RFP request the track?
So we left it broad so we could get both style machines.
Okay.
It allowed it for holder and trackless that we've previously purchased, but also with this track machine as well.
Okay, and that, so that doesn't interfere with the purchasing policy of needing, okay. Awesome, thanks.
With the purchasing thing, we set the parameters and we can set them super broad, and then we kind of throw that out into the universe and let contractors make their best offer.
With this, granted, we need the human power to operate the sidewalk plow tractors, but do you feel like the department will be more adequately prepared to?
This machine is designed to do what this town's needed forever. There's not a whole bunch of fancy buttons. It is, my son could jump in it and run it.
I know.
So your purchasing and your dollar amount actually goes towards the quality of the machine. Prinoth is actually the company that most snow groomers are in New England. So that's what this company has always done. And we actually demoed this machine for kind of the worst storm that we had last year. It's where we got like a foot of snow and then the rain and then it froze solid on us. And it went up and over anything we could ask it for. And for what you could expect out of it, chewed through the ice and everything that we needed to. But if we had that to begin with, it wouldn't have ever been a problem.
One more, sorry, this is a topic dear to my heart. And this one tractor will service all 5 villages? No.
So this one tractor is designed to do these 2, 3, 4 lanes of wet, heavy snow.
Okay.
So we previously purchased a machine that can kind of maybe do everything and get.
Yeah.
And so that's what this machine's for. And we have the 2 other machines for downtown purposes and squeezing in and out of tight spots and your summer sweeping and that type of stuff.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Thank you.
So this is replacing the holder that we have, correct?
No, we're keeping the holder because that's the skinny one that actually fits in under the railroad underpass. This is replacing our rugged best machine that we were supposed to, it's made it since 2008, so it's done its job, but this is what it's replacing.
And is that a tracked or?
That's the trackless.
No, trackless, okay. And did you have any problems in the past with that doing its job?
Trackless, it's more of the maintenance item because you have so many moving parts. It articulates like a loader, but it also has four-wheel drive. So I'm sure, as you can imagine, when you're around the corner and have that 5-foot snowbank in front of you, you're just chewing and chewing and chewing. And with a snowblower, it's cruise control. So you can't like ease up on it and get into it. It's you're wound for sound and you kind of what gear you're in.
Just as I wrote, I just think it's a shame we're buying a piece of equipment that's a one-season piece of equipment, and that it bothers me to have that piece of equipment sitting around majority of the year, because let's face it, with global warming and the climate crisis that we're under, we're not getting the snowstorms. And for us to purchase a piece of equipment that's solely designed strictly for snow removal, to have it sitting around as much as it will be is bothersome to me. And that's why I did look at the video for the trackless MT7, and there's a wealth of attachments that can go on that piece of equipment. And it's a little bothersome that we're not thinking about more usability for a piece of equipment. And that's something we really need to start thinking about more uses of our equipment, because for it to sit around and us to have this expensive piece of equipment that is, I don't know where this is going to live, but for it just to sit around for, maybe 4 or 5 snowstorms is a little disturbing to know that our taxpayers are paying for that. So I'd like some sort of input from you guys as how we can better utilize our equipment for more of the seasons, get more usage out of it. Because I don't know how old the piece of equipment is that we have now that we're replacing, but that's been used strictly on snow, correct? Yeah.
So I just want to touch on this really quickly. I know Jeremy has some comments. One of the things that we really struggle with is sometimes when you have a piece of equipment that you can use for everything all year long, it doesn't necessarily do any one thing great or well. So in this case where we have so many miles of sidewalks, and even today I showed Tracy with these Sykes Mountain projects, we added 3,500 feet of sidewalks onto our roads. So for us, we need a tractor, a piece of machinery that is really built to tackle these and do it really, really well. So when we purchase, for example, we have the smaller whacker loader that was purchased a few years ago. That's a great tool all year long. We are able to use it during the winter to assist us with some snow blowing and some snow removal in these tight areas, but it just doesn't chew through it the way the sidewalks tractor like this does. And so, when we have as many miles of sidewalk as we do in the 16+ mile range, and we're going through and we're battling all the snow that the snow plows push on there, storm after storm, and we're trying to be responsive to a level of service for our residents and maintain our sidewalks as walkable as possible. We did make a decision to recommend the tool for that job, and we understand it is expensive and something that, we plow more than 5 times a year, particularly during snow removal. It's out, so it really gets a workout from, the end of November through March. So, it's a decision that, we support having the right tool for the job.
The warranty on this piece of equipment?
That's the extended warranty. It was 5 years, 5 years. 5 years, 1,500 hour.
And what is your expected lifespan of this piece of equipment?
So with our sidewalk machines, we expect first line response at 5 years, replacement at 10 years. So the machine I'm replacing is actually a 2008. So it's 13 years old. It's been rebuilt 3 times. It's been out of service for 17,156 hours because I can't get parts. It's expensive. And that machine actually did have the broom on it before. It goes again, the little whacker loader that we purchased, much cheaper machine, much easier to repair parts, much easier to buy the attachments for, perfect to use all year round. This is more like a grader, but for sidewalks. And that's what my complaints all winter long are, sidewalks. I very rarely get them about our roads.
So what will you do with a small dusting of snow?
Small dusting of snow will be the little holder. That's practical. This comes with a blade, so it will be this. A lot of towns don't like this because they actually have really long runs of sidewalk, so it doesn't have the capacity to carry a lot of salt. But our runs are close enough to our facilities that that's not a problem. But for future reference, that 3-foot snowstorm that we got, myself and other highway staff personally came in for 3 straight days to try to use the materials that I had to get the sidewalks open, and we still couldn't do it. I don't know if anybody remembers the picture of the loader and the plow going down Route 5. That was me, and that was the last resort.
Dennis, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I have a few questions about this. As the chair and the vice chair and the manager don't know that I've had some questions about this. One thing I always do when we're talking about something new to the town, because we didn't have this particular thing before, is how we ever got along without it before. So that always runs through my mind on new stuff. And so I'm struggling with this. And I'm curious, I didn't ask this before, but why is it we're getting half of, for the trade that some of the other companies were doing, they're giving us half that amount for our equipment?
I can't give the reasons on their dollar amount. It's no different than trading your car in for a Chevy or a Ford or one of those. As far as your first question, we actually have had these before. If you remember, we had some old Oliver dozers that we used to plow our sidewalks with. And it's the same exact thing. So this machine is just super heavy. If you get too much snow, you can pick your plow or snow blower up and drive over 3 feet of your sidewalk just to back down and clean the sidewalk off. Your sidewalk machines don't carry any trade because everything's crammed in. They try to make it so you can use it all year long. So you have all these buttons in your dash and all these extra hydraulic hoses that they're trying to fit in this really tiny, high horsepowered machine. And it's just not, you just can't. Too many parts wear out. This is just a very simple, straightforward, here's a plow, here's a snowblower, here's a heavy machine, clear the sidewalk.
Well, I read the explanation about how this has no drive shafts and so forth as a 4-wheel drive tractor would be, but I've had some equipment experience over the years between military and the business I used to be in. And yeah, maybe you don't have 4-wheel drive, but you've got clutches to turn, to make the tracks go or whatever often. I don't know if this is hydraulic or how it works, but I guess I don't feel I'm totally sold on that's less parts, because anything I've ever seen with tracks is the guides and adjusting the tracks and so forth is they're usually avoided unless absolute necessary. And I often get criticized for talking, asking these questions when we've got professional staff like you folks sitting there. It's not really, I don't feel I'm doing that. I also have to answer to the taxpayers here. When they get their bill and say, Jesus, why do my taxes go up so high? I feel that's why we're sitting here. So I do think we can scrutinize this stuff, or should be. I think that's why we're sitting here. So I guess I'm hung up on the trade of just if it was close, anywhere near what the other outfits were doing, I'd feel more comfortable. I'm just wondering if, is it possible we could sell it on our own and get more out of it? It's just, there's $10,000 in the difference there.
So we have tried the selling thing with the yard sale before, and there actually is a gentleman, I believe, over in Lebanon that buys sidewalk tractors and attachments and parts and stuff. And I have not looked into. I just know we haven't had good luck trying to sell the stuff outright before. By the time we're done
sure it's
following the
tough.
policy.
And Dennis, we can't really, for the purchasing process, we can't negotiate. And we can't go back to one bidder and say, hey, what do you think about the trade-in on that? We have to let them put together a bid. They actually open them publicly in my office, and the bidders can attend if they want and get all of, it's a very public process. So we can't really go back and say, hey, are you willing to give us a little bit more? We have to follow this process.
Yeah, I understand most of what you just said. I don't necessarily like it, but I understand what you're saying. Yeah, and the other company was going to give 22,000, so $12,000 more for this used tractor that we've got. I really hate to sit before you and say this, but I guess I'm not going to support this. I'm wondering if a little more homework needs to be done. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dennis. One more question. Do we know, is this machine any more environmentally friendly than the one that it's replacing?
So there was environmental comments about it. That's one of the issues that you're running in with these sidewalk machines is these snow blowers require so much horsepower and everything else. Everybody's trying to compact everything for the environmental friendly portion of it. The fact that this machine does not do anything else other than plow snow, there's not a bunch of unnecessary stuff on the motor creating more emissions, if that makes sense.
Perfect. Thank you. Other questions? All right, hearing none, we'll entertain a motion.
We try to work down through the line. So I did the liquor control. I guess that would be your turn.
Okay, it's fine. I gotta find
Here's
I got it. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we authorize the Department of Public Works to purchase a new Terrace SW50 sidewalk tractor from Chadwick Barrows, and to include the purchase of the optional blower, extended chute, and 5-year extended warranty for a total cost of $171,372.
And is there a second?
Second.
Second, okay. Any further discussion or comments? Is that Mike seconded? Is that correct? Yep, Mike, yep. And okay, so we'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 nay.
So I think everyone is in favor except for Dennis, who's opposed.
Did I read that correctly?
Okay, anything else?
Oh, that was one of 3. Speaking of snow, winter snow high.
You want to do this one?
You're more welcome to.
All right, this is our biannual, right? We do this every 2 years. We put out our snow plowing and removal award for the public parking lots, the South Main Street lot, this parking lot, Bugby, Quechee Visitor Center. And this year, we received one bidder as from our contractor that we had last year who did a great job. And so he went up in very, very minimally in his services prices. And so we are asking to award for the next 2 winners to Potter Construction.
Thank you. Joe, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move that we authorize the Department of Public Works to award the 2022 and 2023 snow plowing contract to Potter Construction.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Kim. Any other questions or comments? Any?
Yeah, just one question I guess I have is the welcome center that's out to Quechee, we are responsible as a town for that plowing?
Yes. So that was an agreement made when that was developed, however, many, many years ago, that in perpetuity, the town would do parking lot maintenance, plowing, and do we do the landscaping there?
Some people inherit China Hannah and I inherit cemeteries and old agreements to plow and landscape things.
And one other question I guess I have, and I'm probably going to be a short question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. What would you need for staff to be able to handle this plowing?
I don't feel prepared to answer that tonight because it would be an increase in staff and equipment that would probably be significantly more than what we're paying
So
for somebody
it would
else
be-
to do it.
So it would be much higher for staff. I mean, that's the basic question, I guess.
Absolutely. You would not be able to touch the numbers you're getting right now if I was to purchase the whatever number of vehicles and probably 3 personnel to do it, to maintain it, and you're putting the liability back on the town of Hartford.
And we've kind of batted around the idea to model like what Lebanon does. They actually attempt to hire temporary winter staff just for plowing. And I certainly can't speak for this year when everybody's in some dire hiring circumstances. I know that program has been, I don't want to say unsuccessful, but they've had a really hard time finding people who are willing to come in and be on call to do snow plowing. So, you know, it really would probably likely be somebody that we'd have to, not that we wouldn't enjoy the extra company at Public Works, but have to have on all year long. So,
And we did, just for the record, we did eliminate one contracted plowing lot, which was for the solid waste facility about 4 years ago. And we took that on ourselves just because slow traffic and
You mentioned something that is a good question, liability aspect. If they should hit something out there when they're plowing, they accept that liability, they're covered. Okay.
That's one of the reasons you only received one bid. A lot of your private contractors don't carry workman's comp insurance, and that is what we require.
I'm just concerned about sidewalks being torn up or edges being torn up. You know, that's the big thing.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much for your answers.
All right, any other questions? We'll call the question then. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, so it's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. All right, me again. So this is kind of an interesting and unusual one. So tonight I'm coming before you to ask to award a bid to install the decorative lighting on South Main Street. And this was originally part of the construction contract. But unfortunately, you know, not to ring the bell again, but with supply chain issues, the ability to get the lights that match everything else in our downtown and meet all of our lighting standards has now gone out to a 14 to 16 week lead time. And in consultation with our engineering team and our partners at the state, we made the decision to remove that from the general contractor's contract because it would just keep them on the hook and keep their contract active so you wouldn't be able to do it in the winter and you'd be waiting for this one item to get installed. So acting on good advice, we elected to remove that from the general contract, call that project substantially complete, and reissue the bid with a local electrical contractor. So we worked with our consultant. They developed us bid documents, essentially worked through the whole bidding process. They actually solicited bids specifically from local electrical contractors, and we received 2 bids. One from Richard Electric and MDL Electric, both of Hartford. Richard's bid was for a total price of $114,434. And the total price from MDL was $114,340.20. We are recommending to go with the bid from MDL. There unfortunately were some errors in the bid process for Richard Electric, so that disqualified them. And so we're asking to award to them. We are anticipating some costs that we'll have to absorb in-house to protect the infrastructure that's already been put in place, like the bolts and stuff for the bases to hopefully ensure they don't get damaged over the winter.
Questions or comments for Hannah? Mike?
Yeah, so I just see the bid from Richard was for 17 fixtures and MBL's for 19. Was that part of the issue for why they couldn't?
Unfortunately.
Okay, gotcha. And, okay, no, that makes sense. Thanks.
And question, that we've discussed it before as far as the availability to mount something on the side of these poles, the aspect of the engineering of the poles. Are they heavy enough to utilize for something other than lights?
So these poles are designed to take two banner arms, the standard kind of square that you see, like that have the two poles on either side. It is not standard. I know there's been questions about having flags on them. It's not standard for these decorative metal poles to also have the flags on them. So that's something that we would have to revisit with the company that manufactures them for consideration or opinion afterwards. It's also important to remember that some of these are in some pretty tight spaces against like roads and sidewalks. So like there might be space for a banner, but not really a flag. So yes, banners are a definite possibility or an absolute yes. We're not quite sure about flags.
When you say banners, what size of banners is it supposed to be able to support? Because therein would be a question of how big a flag to put on there. I know you're saying that it's not designed for flags, but if we could have a flag in a form of a banner, I'm not sure what size there's.
I don't know what size they are off the top of my head. I know they're kind of standard banner sizes you see in other municipalities. I don't know if they're like 2x3 or something like that.
Yeah, let me see if I can do it all.
Dennis, go ahead.
Yeah, along with the flag possibility, and just some history here. I know, again, some of you know this. The veterans groups have put flags on the sidewalks because there's been holes in the sidewalks. That's until now, because with the new construction, the new sidewalks don't have the holes, so we put the flags in them. And so the idea of the flags is something that I hope we can keep in mind with these lights, because it's coming down to where we won't have another option because they can't put them in the sidewalks anymore. No holes. So I know I've mentioned the veterans group's desire is to have them up from Memorial Day to Veterans Day over the summer. And I'm one of the younger veterans that have been involved in this. We're aging, so it's a lot of work to put them up and down, up and down, up and down for each of the holidays. So that's been a desire anyways. And if we're ever going to do that, now seems like it would be the only chance of making that happen.
Thanks, Dennis. Kim?
I just, for the record, well, if there's any way to incorporate electrical outlets or some sort of adaptable after the fact add-on electrical outlets, I think it would be really, really appreciated by the downtown business communities. So
I did get my answer, and there are outlets.
yes, thank you.
Awesome. Wait just a minute. I question that if we're going to have electrical outlets on there for purposes of downtown businesses, we're paying the electrical bill. What's the purpose of having an electrical outlet for downtown businesses?
For holiday lights on South Main Street. Not all year round, but like holiday lights during the holidays, like what happens in Woodstock or Hanover. I think if you ask the downtown businesses, they would contribute to the cost of the electricity if that were an issue. They've been asking for this for years.
I just see a meter spinning.
Especially Gate Street. I don't have a strong preference one way or another, professionally speaking, but I know it is something that has been requested for several years from before when I was on the select board.
Thanks, Kim. Dennis?
I think that is such an ingenious idea you just had there. That I guess it's already been thought of, but you know, we've got all the activity with First Friday, and I'm sure these little groups and bands and the screens that we've had up down there and whatnot, and probably struggle for a place to plug all this stuff in. So I think I suggested this when we did the Queechee Falls Park. just knowing there'd be events there and no place to plug anything in. So I think we have places that people can plug in for, sound equipment or whatever. So it reminds me, I think it was when I went to pick up my packet the other day. There's an outlet outside of Town Hall here. I didn't even realize it was there, but there was somebody here using their phone through the outlet, and I assume they had Wi-Fi because they were here too, but these things get used. So it's probably very minimal with all the LED lighting today and whatnot. So the charge for what little power would be used, I think would be minimal. So I think that's just great.
And Hannah, do we know about the energy use of these light bulbs? How green are they?
They are the highest standard of LED that's commercially available for
Perfect.
us right now. And one thing that we're working on right now is trying to make sure that everything is sort of matching as close as it can. So, if we have 3 or 4 extras on hand, we can have, we can repair one that breaks in Hartford Village and one that breaks here. So we're trying really hard on that, making sure that everything's the highest standard, but also something that we can have in stock easily.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah.
Is this bid like to provide the fixtures and install them, or is it just an installation? Like, were the fixtures purchased elsewhere? So they were purchased through, or they will be purchased through? Okay.
Yeah. That's why it's so expensive. Because right now the bases are already installed.
Yeah.
The conduits are already installed. The wire is pulled. We're literally just, we were anticipating that these lights would be installed in the contract that's, now considered complete. And then all of a sudden with all the changes with supply chain issues, all of a sudden it was like, boom, we can't get them.
So we're looking at that 14 to 16 weeks out from whenever
we award and give notice to proceed.
Okay.
Other questions? All right, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll move that the board award the contract to MDL Electric in the amount of $114,340.20 and authorize the town manager to execute and implement the contract, including additional expenditures as may be necessary.
Second. Other questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ally?
Aye.
Perfect. Okay, unanimous. Thank you. Great.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, that brings us to the health officer updates. Welcome, Brett, when you're ready.
Good evening. I'll keep this as short as I can. So what I'm here to do is give you a little overview because we have some new board members, and even in the past year and a half, I haven't been able to really address it. So I am the town health officer for Hartford, which is a weird thing because I am attached to the town. I am, as you know, what the select board, who is the Hartford Board of Health, makes a recommendation to the Commissioner of Health for the state of Vermont. And then the commissioner appoints a health officer, and we also have a deputy health officer who has been appointed by him. We are not state employees, but because we are public officials in the state of Vermont, we are covered under the liability of the state of Vermont for anything we do within a scope of our work. As the select board, in a situation that is discussing public health issues or a hearing around a public health issue, become the Board of Health. I serve as your secretary and your executive officer of that board. So we're the 7 people here and myself form the Hartford Board of Health. We have only, in the last 14 years, we've only had to adjourn once, for a hearing. I do keep you informed, as you know, on a weekly basis as the Board of Health. So that's why you get that. I don't put Board of Health, but you are the Board of Health, so you need to know what is generally happening with the health officers. I have a little update. As the years have passed, health officers have been more utilized in the bigger towns, and most health officers are attached to a town that have the amount of work we have. It's not necessary, but just for their own convenience, many of them are code enforcement, but we don't have a lot. I mean, we have very limited codes in the town of Hartford, so we have never gone that way. And I've talked to people, their department heads, and back when a long time Hunter was town manager, he didn't believe in code enforcement for one reason or another. But we're still out doing our job. So I think the town manager sent out a little blurb. We do a few things. One, we oversee all issues around public health. And it doesn't have to be our main thing, which is the health officers in the state of Vermont at this point still oversee all rental units in the towns that they work within. So we oversee all state laws under the rental health codes. Those are pretty extensive, and we work together with the town fire marshal and deputy fire marshal, but mainly the town fire marshal on any life safety issues, which are both fire and health. But because they're the experts, we work together and do that. And it works very well. That has been happening for the last 10 years, very well in the town of Hartford, or maybe 9 years, somewhere in that. Because of just the way society is moving, public health obviously is becoming a bigger issue, or not only here in Vermont, but around the country and around the world. So the workload is a lot more than it was when I started 14 years ago. But we're still handling that workload fairly, I think well, considering there's just two of us and we work as a good team. So I had been reaching out, and I'd spoken to a number of you about how to strengthen what we do and the communication within the town of Hartford around public health. So the only person that I truly got to update a little bit was the chair, because I happened to have a meeting on the same night that we actually served on another board, the Upper Valley Public Health Council, is that instead of working through the select board, the Hartford Restorative Justice Center has, in meetings with police and fire and myself, have offered to facilitate a community committee that will be a working committee on different public health issues, addressing people that might be in the legal system, in the mental health or drug system in Vermont, and the unhoused. And then other things that might attach to those three main issues that we spend a lot of time on. Today alone, I spent, and this was a rare situation, I don't want to go into it, but I have probably put in at least 6 hours on one situation today. And much of that was around helping people socially get through this particular issue and maneuver through that. I know we're looking for, the town is looking for some support in the community social services area. And I the town manager has informed me that one of those is getting close, very close. And we're all hoping that the other one will come soon. But I think it is a good issue that we're going to get team partners coming into this committee. I have full support. Well, I believe I have support from the town manager. The fire chief is 100% behind this, and Deputy Chief Vale is one of the initiators of, and he's really happy about this issue, as well as the fire marshal. And they're all and the fire marshal, myself, and somebody through the police department will all be serve on that committee. So it hopes to be formed sometime around mid to late October to have the first meeting and move forward on that. I think I'm going to just leave the generals there and open up to any questions for a few minutes. So,
Kim, go ahead.
Yes.
So that working committee is through Restorative Justice? Or
They're facilitating that committee. So they offered to facilitate it after long discussions with the Hartford Police Department on how they can better serve people that might be on the fringe of the legal system or just entering it without having to go. And they also have full support from the state's attorney on that too. So they just made, they've reached out and made that offer to facilitate this committee. So it's really not, it'll be a community committee, facilitated through a nonprofit, which opens that committee up for resources that are beyond sometimes what the town has financially and in work. So I think that's a great thing.
And the makeup, was it just the people?
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm just talking to Brett.
Yeah.
Okay. Members, the committee is formed by the people you mentioned. Also, any impacted?
The Justice Center is going to reach out to all community partners, mental health, housing. I'm probably missing quite a few, but they're going to actually reach out to other community partners. The Center of Food Services that would meet they'll meet once a month and then it'll be run a lot like the Child Protection Committee, if you've heard about that over the years, where you're actually looking at the needs of real people and families, so that it's a work, it'll be a work group, not, we'll do this in the future. No, it'll be an action committee.
And including like impacted community members or just social service agencies?
Impacted community members. So sort of blanked out a little there, but people that we would like, they will also reach out to liaisons of city boards, possibly that are connected, select board member, or a liaison from the select board. So it's and the community. So they will have, other people that are actively working in groups right now. So it's going to be a work group, not an official only you and you. It'll be people that are trying to, out there. One of the big things we're lacking, only because of all the things that have happened in the last 2 years, is that communication, of course, even with great organizations like Upper Valley Strong and Public Health Council, sometimes one group's going here and the other's going here. They really want to get the same thing done on an individual, but that way everybody's sitting at one table and can actually talk about people themselves. Again, not names, but situations, and how that, the community then can reach out and work on that situation. So it's a beginning. There is a similar group that is in WG Phil had done some research, and there's a similar group that has been formed in Rutland, and I guess it's working extremely well. Will be our own entity here, but we'll sort of look into things that they've gone through already and how they work through it. So.
Thank you.
Like,
I might just have a couple. Yeah, just hi Brett, how you doing? Just had a couple questions just about the role of the health officer. So one thing, you mentioned that you deal with the rental units. Does your jurisdiction extend also to like shelters and encampments, as we've sort of discussed?
So that's a public health issue.
Yeah.
Just a good example of the discussion tonight. So I inform the town of Hartford.
Yeah.
I inform the pertinent department heads in the town of Hartford, as well as a lot of these are not on Well, none of these right now are on town of Hartford property. So I reach out to property owners, whether it be the state or that, and inform them also. So at least everybody's formed. From there, I stay within the bounds of public health.
Yeah.
And it's not my decision to get involved in planning or in another department.
Yeah.
Although we work extremely well together, and they're always supporting me as I try to support them.
Yeah.
But
what kind of relief can you order, like on your own, within your sort of inherent authority?
So we can, depending. So public health orders, there are two types. There's an emergency public health order, and that's a situation that is very broad, and that's why it's called emergency.
Yeah.
For anybody to go against that, they would have to start proceedings in Superior Court to try to take that away.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that stands. Health orders are usually used around rental type of things where, and we have only had one in, I don't know, for 14 years. So
yeah.
Now the emergency health orders I do, I had to unfortunately put 2 on today because of a severe situation. I hope to lift 1 within 48 hours once everybody is stable and safe.
Is that like a prohibition on like inhabiting a certain area or something?
This one happens to be inhabiting a whole floor of a place because of an incident that happened. And a good example is the encampment that was on state railroad property on Prospect Street, the original encampment there. I did place emergency health order, and I did that when the situation rose that both the inhabitants of the encampment and others were in a situation where their health, their public health was at jeopardy. And that happened to be around paraphernalia that was dangerous to both them and others who might be going in that area. So it's, I take it very serious, and I limit it to, really when it comes down to severe public health.
Yeah. So then if I took one more question, Dan, just procedurally, I'm sort of interested. It sounds like there are instances where we are or can be empowered as the Board of Health.
Yes.
Where you're our executive officer. I think you said that was convened maybe one time.
No, well, that's only, for many years, it wasn't very well understood. Even though I tried. You are, there's no convening. You are the town of Hartford under the state mandates.
For the Board of
You are, for the town of Hartford, the Board of Health. Your duties are what you want to make it. Some towns, their Board of Health meet literally weekly. Others may never have met at all. It's up to the town, the town to decide how they want to use it.
So presumably we could, as our officer, we could tell you to join a public health working committee as like our representative or something like that.
Well, I'm always your representative.
Yeah, okay.
So that part, because I am part of your health board.
Okay.
So I will always update you on any work that I do in the perimeters of the town health officer for Hartford.
Thanks, I really appreciate all the insight.
Sorry, Larry.
So just brought up a good point, a question about, we were talking earlier about the homeless encampments and you brought up a point about the homeless encampments on Prospect Street. So these homeless encampments that are up there now on A Street, you've visited these, yes?
Yes, I have.
And in your opinion, are they a health hazard to the individuals that live there?
So let me, I don't, in this capacity, I'm not going to give you my opinion. I'm going to give you my opinion as the health officer overseeing public health for the town of Hartford. So at this particular, now, when you said one of the A Street encampments is abandoned, that's I think a health hazard because it's full of garbage, but nobody really is there. It is on private land, not state land. You know, I put the warning out that, you know, you probably shouldn't have anybody going up there. The other active encampment at this point under public health, at this time of year, I want to make all this clear because there's a lot of judgments that you have to make. It is not a public health hazard to the people there or others at this time. Now, that could change in a few months, or that could change in a few days, depending on how that, you know, it'd be like you go camping somewhere, you know, you're safe for a while. But if you camp too long and you have no facilities or no anything else, you're going to maybe get sick.
What my concern is in terms of the facilities for these people to use for cleanliness.
Right.
Health and safety,
So
cleanliness.
at this time, which I did some checking, I was amazed they are using public, no, not town of Hartford, but public facilities for cleanliness.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then my other question is, you spoke about these abandoned buildings that you just talked about. Abandoned buildings that are in the town of Hartford, do you have the ability to condemn them?
Yeah, so the abandoned encampments are tents. The buildings have been removed. There is one structure off of A Street that is quite old. It is not, how do I want to put this? It's been there for a long time, beyond anybody putting it there. It was built by the person who originally lived there. So I want to make that clear. So the others are tents. Most, unfortunately, when they're given tents, they're never collected again. And we have tents everywhere that are abandoned right now.
So you have the ability to condemn that area for?
If it's interfering, yes, if it's interfering with the public's health. Now, there are a couple of that you know, I'm working with the town with, and said there's one on state property that's on the river. It's fine right now, but with the snow, I mean, it's literally on a cliff on the river. So it could all be in the river. Now that affects a greater number of people. It's full of garbage, it's full of everything else. So that one, you know, in a few months could be raised to a very high limit. I have notified the state, so the state's aware of that. There are others that there is one right now that I have concerns as a public health problem. It doesn't have any structures. It's all tents, but it's close to a population that would raise it to a high level. And a good example is, if I have a house, just anybody's house, but the garbage is flowing everywhere outside their house that we've had this happen. And it happens to be next to a schoolyard. And they may have materials that are beyond garbage that are hazardous. I've come in and put a emergency health order on those situations. And they've been cleaned up. But we don't go out and look at public houses to do, I mean, it would have to be that kind of a situation. So in this case, we have one encampment that is leaning that direction. That I know the people who work with campers are also concerned with this particular one. And it's a matter of, looking at a plan and moving forward on it. But
as far as other buildings that are like for like residences that have been left and neglected in the town of Hartford.
yes, so
You can condemn those buildings?
yes, we can. Yeah. So, but the fire marshal also has that privilege. We work together to see what is most functional. We have one resident here in Hartford that we're working with. It's been a long case because of a number of situations around the owner's health, and so we're working with them to have that building secured or removed. So,
thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Right. Thank you very much, Brett.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
for coming and sharing that. And that will bring us to changes to the conflict of interest in purchasing policy. So back over to you, Tracy, when you're ready.
Yeah, so this came up during a desk audit of our FEMA grant. So whenever you receive federal funding, the state will come in and do what's called a desk audit. So they're going to review the policies and procedures, our compliance with everything, and make sure that we are on the up and up in order to make sure that we don't, that we have focused on all the allowable activities, monitoring, eligibility, all of those sorts of things. So Dan and I were blessed to be part of the desk audit for the COVID-19 expenses that came through FEMA. And this was about $30,000, Dan, I'm sorry, that's not, okay. So the state auditors during that desk audit provided us with 2 formal recommendations for strengthening our conflict of interest policy and our purchasing policy when using federal grant funds. This was great because this was a $30,000 grant, and we're getting ready to have another federal grant come our way, which is significantly more money in our American Rescue Plan Act funding, right? So these are 2 addendums, one to the conflict of interest policy and one to the purchasing policy, that we got some suggested language actually from the state in terms of making sure that we are fully complying with the Code of Federal Regulations. I know that both of these policies could use a full refresh. That's not in the work plan right now for human resources, which is one person. But we wanted to make sure that we were in concert with the state, making sure that our policies, when we accept this ARPA money and begin allocating it, that we do have these 2 items formally in these policies.
So a little bit more background on that meeting that we had. It was, I can't remember, 2 hours, 4 hours long, a very long meeting. And I have to give a shout out to Gail Ostrout, our financial director, who had literally a stack of paper that was probably 3 feet high to support this. She could answer every single question, knew where every single penny was. And the person that was conducting this audit was very impressed with the town of Hartford and how the finances had been handled. So that was really, really reassuring. And that has come on board. I think Gail, since she's been here 4 or 5 years, I don't have the time frame correct, but I really want to give a shout out to her to making that process easy, because it could have been very, very painful and gone on a very long time. But she knew where everything was, every document, every penny, and could trace it back in a way that everyone was happy about. So these 2 tiny little changes was just like really like, we got a 99% on this test, if you will. And these 2 little changes just really make things smooth sailing.
As a former auditor, double thumbs up. We have great internal control processes, and we have a great process for managing our outside grant funding.
So thank you, Gail. So I don't know if there's other questions.
Just one quick one. So if we didn't make these changes, it wouldn't necessarily impede our ability to get federal grants, but these seem like best sort of practices.
We could get a formal recommendation to comply with this. In theory, if then we ignore that formal recommendation, they could claw back the funding in the future. That's within their purview, especially if they're formal recommendations for compliance.
I think I'm up. And we don't need to read these revisions out loud, do we?
I know, I wrote the recommended motion, as presented by the town manager, because I didn't want to force you all to, reference the Code of Federal Regulations, blah, 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 blah. I'm getting a shred from our note taker that as presented, we can add these to the notes.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I move that the town amend the conflict of interest policy and purchasing policy to include the addendum as presented by the town manager.
I will second that.
Second by Dennis. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tracy. So why don't we take a break for about 10 minutes? We'll meet back here at 8:10 to discuss climate. In this session here. So we will have up the climate resolution.
That's you guys. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll
Yeah,
just
take it.
reveal my beer. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? So good evening, I'm Jack Spicer. I'm a member of the Climate Advisory Committee. And I'm here to present the resolution to implementing the Town of Hartford Climate Action Plan. You should have each received a copy of the resolution in your packet. I have a couple copies here, if folks don't. Anyway, for those of you who I haven't met, I'm a civil litigator in the area. Got my Juris Doctorate from Vermont Law School and my Master's in Environmental Law and Policy from there as well. I used to manage the White River Community Garden over at Ratcliffe Park for a couple of years. I chaired Resilient Hartford, and I also chaired the Ad Hoc Climate Advisory Committee, which preceded the Climate Advisory Committee that I'm presenting on behalf of tonight. So just by way of background, the Ad Hoc Climate Advisory Committee did a couple things of note. First, the Ad Hoc Committee drafted a resolution declaring a climate emergency. And second, the Ad Hoc Committee drafted what became Article 25 for the town ballot in 2020. And what those two notable accomplishments that both the resolution and Article 25 accomplished are, I'll just read them because they're a little bit wordy. So they committed to achieving town-wide net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 and carbon neutrality with the development, maintenance, and operation of the town's infrastructure and equipment by 2027. So I think we can agree, pretty big goals. And then on March 24th, 2020, so last year, the Select Board created the Climate Advisory Committee as a standing committee to advise on really achieving both of those goals that I just laid out. So to advise the Select Board what needs to happen in order to accomplish achieving the town-wide and the municipal infrastructure climate goals. We've taken a number of steps towards that in the past year and a half or so. First, we had an information gathering campaign. We figured out what are the town of Hartford's greenhouse gas emissions, what are the town of Hartford's climate vulnerabilities. We sat down and wrote a request for proposals for a consultant, to hire a consultant to draft a climate action plan. We advised the Select Board throughout that process. We ended up hiring Bell Blue Dot, as you know, and then we presented the climate action plan to you all at your last regular meeting. I think it was August 24th of 2021. So the climate action plan really sets forth some strategies and actions for achieving both of those goals I listed earlier. The resolution before you today, the resolution implementing the Town of Hartford Climate Action Plan, is what the Climate Advisory Committee views as really the preliminary or the first steps towards implementation. And I think I'm just going to take a few minutes talking about what the resolution proposes to do. So you should each have a copy of it. It might just be helpful to follow along. But I guess before we go into the resolution, I just want to make a few general statements. I can't stress enough that it's important to look at what the resolution itself says and doesn't say, because we might just head down a path where we're not actually advising the select board to take those steps right now. So I just want to take a step back. So what's the resolution do? First, it directs staff to develop an internal implementation plan for priority 1 actions. So if you go through the climate action plan, it'll list some priority 1 actions for each of the categories. So things like, how are staff prioritizing these actions? What's the timeline for implementing them? What kind of resources and staff will be needed in order to implement these actions? Those are the kinds of questions we would expect to be answered by the internal implementation, which is the first resolve statement in this resolution. Second, the resolution expresses support for collaboration with stakeholders and key staff members throughout the process of implementing, tracking, and reporting progress. We think that this is key. It spreads the workload, but it also encourages civic engagement and buy-in from the public and taking on what's going to prove to be some pretty heavy tasks. Third, the resolution directs staff to develop an annual report to track progress. And it would be in the town report, according to the resolution as it's drafted right now. So this year's progress towards implementing the climate action plan will be reported at next year's town meeting. Fourth, the resolution commits to the select board to amending its procurement policy to consider greenhouse gas emissions in its purchasing decisions. So this is something that the resolution as it's written commits the select board to doing by the end of February 2022. And then finally, the resolution generally commits to identifying sources and mechanisms for funding the Climate Action Reserve Fund, which was created by the voters in March of 2021. So just to recap, the resolution would direct staff to establish an internal implementation plan, track and report progress annually, expresses support for collaboration in the process, commits to considering greenhouse gas emissions and purchasing decisions, and also commits to identifying potential sources of funding for implementing the climate action plan. We think, as a committee, we think that each of these directives and commitments are necessary to begin the implementation process. So we also think that the resolution is the proper mechanism for directing this and committing to the various be it resolved statements that we've listed. So with regards to directing staff, we think that clear directives from the select board are appropriate here because staff have competing priorities, right? And we simply can't and should not expect staff to volunteer their time to implementing the climate action plan when we know that other priorities are competing for staff time and resources. So a clear and public statement from the select board that directs staff to begin the implementation process we think is necessary. We also think that the directives and commitments should come from the select board in the form of a resolution because we think that the town's voters deserve it. 70% of the town's voters approved Article 25 in 2020. And this resolution will be a transparent approach to ensuring the voters that the select board is committed and in fact, taking steps to implement the climate action plan. So that's really what I have. We have both Courtney Williamson and Eric Krause here from the committee, and we'll all take whatever questions you have.
Thank you. Lanny, go ahead.
So a couple of questions that jump out to me. First thing on here says that we're going to reach carbon neutrality or net zero greenhouse gas emissions townwide by 2030. Nothing in your statement told me how we're going to track citizens' involvement in this thing. So tell me how we're going to track the citizens of the town of Hartford, the homeowners, to help them reach net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 without some help.
Thanks for the question. So first, we really do view this as the beginning steps of implementation. So that first be it resolved statement has the town manager put together an implementation plan. We would think that something like that might fall under, or that kind of question might fall under, how is the town manager going to determine these kinds of things, rather than put ourselves in that role at this point.
So within the town of Hartford, we have people in the community that border on poverty. And how am I, as a select board member, going to tell these people that they have to spend their money on getting their house to net zero greenhouse gas emissions, or spend money to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions, when these people can't put food on their table or buy their medications?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. And it's something that we think about quite a lot. But in my role as a member of the Climate Advisory Committee, I'm supposed to advise the Select Board on how to achieve these goals. The Select Board has already adopted and the voters have already approved. I really I don't have the policy talking points right now to go through why the Select Board back in December 2019 adopted the resolution declaring a climate emergency, which commits the town of Hartford to achieve those greenhouse gas emission reductions that you had just mentioned. But at this point, my job is to advise you on how to best achieve what the goals that have already been set out for you.
I don't disagree with you, but I don't want to put this lightly. I believe the voters did not fully understand what it would mean to be net zero greenhouse gas emissions. And as part of this whole thing, when we say we're going to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions townwide, okay, I haven't seen anything that says who's going to track it, as far as if we don't meet that, what are we doing about that? What are we doing to ourselves? Are we going to put something upon the homeowners if they don't do this? Is the town going to send out our energy coordinator and help these people do this? This statement, this whereas statement, bothers me more than anything else in this whole resolution, because there are so many unanswered questions that our citizens of the town of Hartford have to answer to achieve the goals that we're going to put upon them. And I really struggle with voting yes on this thing, because there's no answers to those questions. And 2030 is just around the corner here. And there's been absolutely nothing presented to any taxpayers from the town of Hartford about how they're going to achieve this net zero greenhouse gas emissions. And I hate to put this all upon the town manager to come up with a plan to meet net zero greenhouse gas emissions, and to tell our citizens within the town of Hartford that they're going to have to not pay your grocery bill this month because you're going to have to insulate your house, or don't get your medication this month. I mean, she's not telling them to do that, but I'm just using it. You're going to have to give your medication because you got to reach greenhouse gas emissions. How are we going to force our citizens to implement this stuff when, like I say, some of them are on the poverty line right now? I really struggle with that aspect of this thing.
And implementing the climate action plan in an equitable way has been at the heart of what we've been trying to do here. But again, these goals were not set out by us. These goals were resolved by the Select Board in December 2019 and then also voted on by the voters in March 2020. My job here is just to advise the select board on how to achieve the goals that are already out in front of us.
Eric, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Eric Krause, Chair of the Climate Advisory Committee. Good questions, Lenny. And I just want to underscore, I guess, I think that last part that Jack just added was part of what I came up to say, which is the intent that's articulated in the Climate Action Plan is a just and equitable transition, which means we're all in this together. Can't leave people behind, otherwise it doesn't work. Do we have all of the answers? Absolutely not. But some of the questions that you're asking are already included in the documents that you've received and adopted. Inherent in the Climate Action Plan, or undergirding that, is the greenhouse gas inventory. And that tells us, I think you started with a line of questioning about understanding where the emissions are coming from and so on. That inventory describes where those emissions come from, best estimates, of course. The other piece of what you're asking about, how are we going to achieve some of these things? There are a number of actions laid out in the Climate Action Plan, and in particular, you've been focused on housing, and there's a buildings and energy chapter, and that chapter includes a number of actions and strategies that move the town in the direction of its goal. And so I think, at a very granular level, like the how of the policies, the how of the campaigns, those remain to be answered. But that's really the goal of the resolution, is to, so the whereas parts that you're commenting on, the whereas is the context or the background. The therefore be it resolved part is the commitments. And those commitments basically say, take what's in the Climate Action Plan, which is a roadmap, and start to break down that roadmap into, okay, I'm going from San Jose to Boston. Day one, I'm going to go here, here, and here. And these are the stops that I'm going to make. And this is how much gas I'm going to buy. And this is how much, or how much I'm going to charge my EV or whatever. And how much food I'm going to need along the way, right? So that's part of the intent of the resolution, is to get granular and start carving off a piece to get to work on. Because we can argue about this all day long, and until we get started on it, we're not going to know all of the answers. The team that, along with Pale Blue Dot, did their best effort at putting together a plan that says these are strategies and actions that we think, in a very broad scope, that we think are going to help get the town to these goals. And there are a lot of pathways. So it's not just one pathway. It's not just, hey, focus on renewable energy or focus on reducing energy use, but it's a whole spectrum of pathways that are applied.
I don't disagree that you guys did a great job in evaluating the town's ability to meet this. However, there are a whole bunch of citizens out there in the town of Hartford that you have no idea what they have for vehicles or equipment or anything else to meet the actual individual goal of the whole town. And I was not on the board at the time that the board stated this, okay? I did vote last meeting to have the first implementation plan started. But I just really have a hard time understanding how it is that we are going to be able to ask our citizens now to get to net zero, and without having any idea of what the community as a whole has for the emission type things that the town has. I mean, are you going to be out there going around, or is your committee going to be out there going around to each and everybody's house to evaluate what their greenhouse gas emissions are? Is that something that you're going to take on as a committee, or is the town going to have to put someone to that role, or how are we going to achieve? And again, as Jack said, it's the town's issue now to do that, okay? But I just see this as part of the Climate Action Committee's undertaking as well to help us get there. And it just seems like it's a monstrous goal to meet.
Absolutely monstrous. And we have a role to play in that. The committee has a role to play. The town has a role to play, but there are other partners in Hartford and beyond that have roles to play as well. To the question of, we don't know what assets that people have, specifically no, but generally yes. That's how the greenhouse gas inventory is developed, because we know how many miles people drive. We know generally how much fuel is consumed and so on. So those numbers represent Hartford in aggregate. That's in the plan. You've seen those numbers before. You've seen how much electricity we use, how much fuel, oil, propane. And so we don't know what that particular individual has for a house and what it will require to weatherize it, for example. But that's what we need to work on. Those are the next steps. So we can stall and try to envision the future, or we can move forward and act with the best information that we have on hand. Again, there's two goals here that Jack articulated. One of them is a townwide goal, and it's an aspirational goal. It's articulated in the climate, in the declaration declaring a climate emergency. It's a non-binding resolution. It's a communication to the town and to people beyond that says this is our commitment. And the plan takes us to 55% of that, roughly, I think. The other binding requirement is what Jack was mentioning as what became Article 25. That's the municipal operations part of it. So there's two pieces to this.
I have no issue. I'm sorry, am I still?
Well, wrap it up because I want to see if other people have questions. But yeah.
I don't have any issue whatsoever with the town's aspect of 2027. I'm just very concerned about the town, the citizens townwide aspect of it, because that there's a big concern about the implementation, or not implementation, the impact this will have upon, in particular, like landlords with dwellings or second homeowners. I have a multitude of concerns about that, and you've done such an awesome job with the town aspect of it that I can only hope that you will do as good with the public side of it, but I have a lot of questions about that. So thank you.
Joe, go ahead.
Eric, or Jack, would I be out of line in saying, because the goals are so lofty, that it is in essence a shoot for the moon? If we miss, we'll be among the stars. That we're trying as hard as we can to get to this, but there is a good possibility that we will not reach these goals. But if we do, we're that much further forward. Is that, would that be an accurate statement, or am I way off?
Yeah, I don't think that's an unfair statement. And again, what the resolution that's before you today does is kind of gets us started, right? We've got a plan, and now it's about trying to see if we can achieve the goals that the plan is intended to achieve. So, yeah, I think, no, I don't think that there's a guarantee that if we follow every single step that we're gonna achieve these goals. But what we're here to do today is try.
I'll just say, you know, we adopted the climate plan last meeting. You know, the people of Hartford kind of put this on us to achieve net neutrality. We're not imposing it on them. They voted for it overwhelmingly. And if we don't take action, they'll find a select board that will. I think Lanny brings up a lot of great questions. And I think the idea of resolving to get started on this is to answer those kind of questions. We have the broad goals. When it comes to actually how we're going to implement that, that's when we need to have sort of staff working on it, communications, and we need to understand how it impacts people, particularly the poorest people. I think we all know that the climate crisis hits those who are in poverty. It hits the poorest worse than anyone else. And certainly, I think built into the climate plan we adopted is a recognition of that, and a conscious effort to make sure this doesn't impose undue burdens. But I think we got to start somewhere, and if that means the town manager convenes a committee or does this and that, I think that's where we go. I mean, I think if you have questions about the resolution, is what it's asking us to do. Do we think this is appropriate right now? I think, we've adopted the climate plan, and that's going to go forward. If we think this helps, I think it's worthwhile to approve it.
Thanks, Mike.
A couple of things. Lanny, I just wanted to give you an example of something that when we had the energy coordinator, Jeff Martin, one of the projects that he implemented, just as an example of some of the ways that we as a town can understand the needs of the community, is the one of the solar, I don't know what the right terminology is. What's the Olcott Park?
Community solar array.
It's a community solar array. So that it basically was primarily grant funded and provided renewable energy at lower cost to members of the community. So I think there's so many opportunities for programs like that too, particularly with the infrastructure bill, that if it goes through, we'll have a ton of incentives and opportunities to fund projects that will really support all of the members of the community. So I just wanted to give that example as something to think about in terms of, it's not like we're going to be saying, you have to, and having homes, whether it's a mobile home or or not regular home, but any home being, if there's support, which there is with all the cover home repair organizations that do weatherization, like the more energy efficient a home becomes, the more affordable that home is to live in. So I think it's thinking of in terms of not just imposing requirements on community members, but also supporting them to make their own quality of life better. Does that make sense? Okay, anyway, and then I have two more things. One is just, I would like to check in with the town manager and see what your comfort level is on this. I mean, I agree that I think we have the mandate, we have the desire to move forward as fast as we can. I think we all understand the shortage of resources, whether it's labor or finances and everything, and I think we're always going to have that to some extent. But do you have any strong reservations about this?
This is going to be my first budget with you all. And for some of us, like our first budget together, right? Or our second budgets together. We're going to start meeting weekly starting in October through the middle of December to try to hammer down a budget. We just talked about cemeteries. We've got to get our act together. Yes, we'll probably close them in the fall, but we need to be ready in the spring. The person who does the town report is out on medical leave for 2 months and is going to come back and try to put the town report out on her deadline. And we have a new environmental sustainability coordinator. I'm scared. I think I'm going to drown. It's all going to happen in the next 3 months. A new staff members out on medical leave, trying to get a budget through for you all, trying to make sure that all of these different things that we even talked about tonight, sidewalk maintenance, what does it look like in the spring, the major construction projects, all of those things require my touch. And this is all coming due at the same time.
Is there a hard deadline I guess there are a couple of hard deadlines that are, the February 2022 is probably the soonest one, but we do have a new energy sustainability coordinator. What's the title?
Environmental sustainability coordinator.
Coming on that presumably could assist with some of this. Like if we.
So let's take a look. for example, the annual town report, that's all happening starting in November and December. And that's going to be a stretch because we're going to be down one staff member in the middle of budget. That's going to be hard. We're going to have a staff member that's been here for maybe a month, who honestly, the stack that's already sitting on their desk of things that people have brought forth is significant. So we're going to have to do some work, he and I, to like really prioritize. I think we've been without somebody in that position for a couple of years. So there's a lot of things that have been waiting or have been kind of piecemeal together through Lori and her amazing staff. They're trying to pick up as much as they can, but there's only so much. So that one's worrisome because I don't know what that would look like and if it would be sufficient and what kind of data collection that would require or work it would take to get that involved in the town report, because all of that comes due right in December. Amending our procurement policies. We could take a look at that. We'd need to run it through lawyers, definitely, and probably VLCT. So that could happen maybe by the end of February, depending on what exactly consideration of scope 1, 2, and 3 greenhouse gas emissions and alignment with goals and strategies looks like, how we want that to play out in the procurement policy. So that's definitely going to involve Gail and probably y'all, VLCT, lawyer, me. We're going to have to talk it through and draft that up. We could probably bring that forth by the end of February, or at least if we hit some snags in terms of staff capacity, VLCT's capacity, or lawyers' capacity, we could at least know where we stood on that. Identify sources and mechanisms for the continued funding of the reserve fund and make annual contributions. You know, we're going to deal with that during budget. I keep a notebook that's in my list of things that we need to deal with, and how that plays out, we'll see in October and November. In terms of a full work sequence and timeline for implementation for priority 1 action items, there's about 100 and change priority 1 action items. I spent a couple of hours with the amazing spreadsheet that Pale Blue but Dot put together. End of December 2021, that's rough. That's a rough spot. That's 2 major things that I want to devote my time and attention to. If we have a new staff member that's new to Hartford, they're not going to be able to just jump in and understand the nuances of the committees, how the town works, all of those sorts of things at once. There's going to be a lot of help going into that staff member. So a lot of that's going to come down on me and the department directors. And we're asking them to take that on in addition to budget, in addition to winter, in addition to the holidays. So that's a little sticky for me. And we got to kind of parse out what it means to support the establishment of a team comprised of staff from key departments and stakeholders. You know, we've got a little bit of an as described as, you know, what that looks like, depending on how y'all think about that. I mean, that could be a big time commitment for staff. It could be a medium time commitment for staff. It could be a small time commitment for staff. But just now, after public comment, I sent out an email to 4 staff members asking them to prioritize me tomorrow morning, and 2 more asking them to have flexibility on my standing meetings. So to add another group could seize up the variety of things that we've all sat here and talked about over the last 6 months. You know, to ask Hannah to take on another committee could mean that she can't devote attention to lighting, sidewalks, maintenance, the major construction projects we have coming up in the spring. I err towards being conservative about this. I don't want to ask my staff to continue to stretch. I would rather be conservative and say, wow, you know, we do have a little bit of extra time here. That's great. Let's do a little bit extra more than asking for another commitment to that. And I know Allie has her hand
Yeah.
where she did, and I want to be cognizant of
No,
it.
thanks. Yeah. So Ellie has her hand up, but she may have questions and or potential want to make a motion. But I guess Eric, if you or Jack would be interested in responding to Tracy's concerns, I think it might be helpful if that's reasonable. But I guess maybe Russell has a comment first.
Russ North, White River Junction. I admit I haven't read the plan, and that's my own ignorance, but looking at this resolution, you're setting Tracy up to fail. There's no way to do that in 3 months. Yes, it's an important thing to do, absolutely. But she's right, during budget season, given the amount of detail you go through in your budget process, I know what the school board goes through, and we don't go through half the level of detail that you all do. So I think you really need to look at that date, because that's just, you're setting everyone up to fail. And the last thing we want to do, because this is an important plan, is not meet the first deadline, because that sets a bad precedent going forward. And people begin to think, well, they're just talking. They're not being realistic in their thinking. So I just want you to all think about that.
Thanks, Russ. Should we go to Ally next, do you think? Or Kim, were you done? Sorry.
Sure. And I mean, either Courtney or anyone wants to address Tracy's, because I could say, yeah, maybe we could modify some dates on this resolution. Would that be an option?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's your resolution. You can certainly make modifications or amendments to it. We had discussed leaving the dates blank, but putting dates in was a jumping off point for this kind of conversation, which we thought was important to have. There's really not going to be a scenario where trying to implement the climate action plan isn't going to impose a priority that's going to compete with other priorities. It will always be competing with other priorities. Mm-hmm. But being realistic is important, and setting ourselves up for failure is something we try to avoid. So yeah, of course, we would be open to amendments to the resolution, especially as far as dates are concerned. And that is something that we had discussed.
Okay. And Ally seems to have put her hand down. So Ally, if you want to speak, oh, it's back up. It's back up. Can we bring Ally over?
Yeah, hi. I had raised my hand about something else, so I lowered it, but I'm raising it again because it's great. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate what's been shared and just trying to balance, the resolution as a means of accountability and of holding us to the urgency of everything that the climate action plan is telling us is urgent and that we have agreed is urgent. And looking at this resolution, it seems like the major point of maybe concern is that December 2021, whereas the rest, besides the February 2022 procurement policies, amendment to its procurement policies, that's really the only specific date. And Tracy, it seems like you maybe think that amending procurement policies by February 2022 does seem reasonable, but it's that December 2021 date that maybe seems less reasonable. So I wonder if it's just, Tracy, if you have a date that you think is feasible, because I definitely, again, I'm thinking of the balance of, if we had no dates, as Jack, you were saying, like, well, then, how do we stay accountable to a timeline? So yeah, maybe we can talk specifically about that kind of first section and amending December 2021 as that deadline for priority one actions.
Yeah, thanks, Ally. I think the other thing that I want to be cognizant of is the annual town report, which happens all in the end of December, and that staff member will be out on medical leave prior to that. So that one makes me a little nervous too, just to promise something that quite honestly might require me writing and drafting and gaining data in hand with our environmental sustainability coordinator. So that one also as well. In terms of a full implementation plan with 103 priority action ones, a work sequence and a timeline, and I could see this being kind of the first primary goal of the environmental sustainability coordinator as he comes on board. So, I think the earliest I really would feel comfortable is saying, the end of January, to give that person 3 full months. Well, October, November, December, January, 4 full months of getting up to speed, building that rapport that we all need when we come into a new place and learn new things, and being able to focus and dive through all of the historical document and the climate action plan, which we all know a close reading of that takes many, many hours, and many, many turns of reading that plan. And I want to be cognizant of their time too, as they wade through all of these different tasks and priorities and questions that everyone's had for them before they even signed on the dotted line to come work for us.
Other questions? Great, so maybe we could entertain a motion with the date change if that would, oh, Eric, did you want to say something else, Eric?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just to respond to a few of the points. Right, so the rationale, there's some rationale behind the dates. They weren't just arbitrarily chosen. The hope is to be able to inform the current budget cycle as much as possible. So even if the resource demands and resource capacity means that it makes more sense to move the implementation plan back X number of months, I think it would make sense for you all to communicate to staff a desire to get as much information as possible into this budget cycle, right? Because again, I mentioned this last time we spoke, you've got, on the municipal side of things, you've got 5 cycles. That's it. And you don't want to be in a position, or some board in the future, you don't want to put that board in the future in a position of having to buy a bunch of offsets because we didn't do things or make choices that are sort of put them on the hot seat, right? So 5 cycles isn't much. So let's not lose one here. So even if the full plan can't come together, what can be accumulated of some of those most impactful items on the municipal side of things, for example, to inform the current budget cycle? That's one thought. The establishment of the team, I think to some degree there's some, yeah, that could be time consuming, but there's also some work has been done on it. And we can just turn to the climate action plan for a place to start. In terms of the annual reporting, I can say from direct experience that I've done most of this. And that is because the energy coordinator vacated his position at a time when we needed to actually start that. He actually was on contract for about a month, if you recall, and he did help us quite a bit considerably in that period of time. But a lot of that work was between me and Lori and gathering the data with Tracy when she came on as well for the fourth quarter. But it's gathering data, and then it's borrowing what Pale Blue Dot, the models that Pale Blue Dot, the spreadsheets and so on that they built for us, and then producing reports. And Pale Blue Dot has offered some templates and so on. So I'm not sure what the terms of that offer is, and I'm sure that they're not the only one capable of producing such templates. So I don't feel like that is too onerous. We've done it. In fact, Jeff Martin and I did a good faith estimate the year that we presented the carbon neutrality article. And we did that from December. We did that in December, and it was presented like a month and a half later. And I think the scope 1 and 2 emissions are spot on, and the scope 3 is a good faith estimate, and it's going to be that way for a while. The point here is to set up a pattern of reporting and to build the mechanisms, internal mechanisms to gather the data so that it becomes sort of second nature, and to have those systems in place. And in the last year, when I worked with staff on that, it was cumbersome because we had to keep asking questions and we had to go to Lebanon to get some of the data for waste and so on. But we've got the answers now. And we need to take time to improve that system to make it efficient. And so let's not just sort of kick that down the road because we don't understand it. There are people that understand it. Amending the procurement policies, the reason for that date is because of board continuity. So there are 4 seats up on the board. And I don't think you want to get that process started and then potentially have a constitutional change in the board and then sort of have to bring the other new members, if there are new members, up to speed. So from my perspective, it just makes sense, I think, to either try to knock that out or just postpone, right? And I hope you don't postpone it because, again, it's about patterns. It's about developing a system or set of systems to support things to go forward in the next 5 cycles. So I just wanted to put a little background behind some of those things. And I think that I totally understand where Tracy's coming from. This is a lot of stuff, but we have some of the answers. Committee members have some of the answers. Some of the answers are in the documents, and we can pull on other resources as well to make this happen. Things like I said, greenhouse gas and reporting and so on is we know how to do it.
Thanks, Eric. Thank you. Kim.
So let's consider this. I mean, I think that the December 21 implementation plan date, it's not necessary. I mean, at that point, we are going to have had most of the budget presentations by then. So I think that is, and I do think that as the budget presentations are coming, that we are thinking about the implementation goals that are in the climate action plan as they're brought forward. And we're going to discuss budget guidance next. And maybe that is an element that we could expand. It's already in there a little bit, but that I do feel like extending that deadline of the implementation plan for once the environmental sustainability coordinator, right?
Yeah, good job.
is here for a couple months and can help Tracy with it rather than just put it on the top of Tracy's stack. So I propose that we do make an edit to the date for approval or for the implementation plan to be approved by the select board till maybe like April 2022.
Which paragraph? I'm probably going to be reading this resolve, I think, so.
Yeah, so it's the one that reads, now therefore be it resolved that the town of Hartford direct the town manager to work with staff and town commissions and committees to develop an implementation project plan for priority 1 actions identified in the town of Hartford climate action plan that specifies a work sequence and timeline for implementation tasks and estimates necessary funding and staffing resources to be presented to the select board for approval by the end of December 2021, with progress updates to be reported to the select board at quarterly intervals.
And you're just suggesting April 22 there? That's the only change?
For that paragraph, does that seem reasonable to you, Tracy?
I had thought earlier, and now when you're saying that, I'm thinking that we also made a commitment to get the capital improvement plan kind of rolling, like a fresh, robust. It doesn't mean a full implementation plan doesn't mean that we're not going to make progress on those items. In fact, I could even see in a great situation coming forth with an implementation plan where there's actually things that have already been done. And that used to happen to me when I was an auditor and I would put forth recommendations and the department would come back and be like, we already did that before we even released the report. It also, I want to say, yeah, thanks for the extra time, Kim. That's awesome. and commit myself in this meeting to say, that doesn't mean that we're not going to be ahead of the game. It doesn't mean that we're not going to possibly come forth and say, out of 103 priority ones, we've already accomplished blank of these, and these are in progress. We could go a little earlier, but we also have, I either want to get this done before the election and town meeting day or after.
Jim, I just like that. Why April?
Well, when she was doing the count of when, if this position is filled at the beginning of October, and then we're going through budget season, and basically just kind of thinking about the human capacity to accomplish that particular project. Wasn't based on timing of budget season or anything.
Hey, I'm Courtney Williamson, third of this trio tonight. Building on what you're saying about, say it's April and you actually might have already gotten through some of the things. If we did that, but then also built into this particular paragraph, something that then resets us so this conversation is had before the budget cycle. So it would be something like, I don't have my readers, but something like, it would be the April date and annually thereafter at the end of August, so that we sort of reset and we are ahead, so that we're not always chasing the timing, because all those minute decisions stack up. So if we could catch up in April and then reset, I think then we don't lose as much time as we might think we would. So I just want to propose maybe that as an additional thing to this motion on the table. And then I just want to say, generally speaking, as the person who, I don't understand the technology of this. I don't understand. it's just mind-boggling. It's bewildering and technical and scary. And if I was in your shoes, I would leave. It's a lot, right? But I just, the amount of knowledge concentrated in these two men and in this community, and the longevity, to bolster all the normal transitions and onboarding and offboarding, it's just, we do have something really special here that is an opportunity. And I would hate for us not to lean on them, even though, transitions make it hard or whatever. It's just, let's also look at our positive, which we have some serious experts at the helm that can help. And I just want to, I can't really brag about himself, but, these guys are going to help. So I just want to, that's my editorial, but just if we do push this date, first one, let's maybe try to reset so we're ahead of the budget next.
Well, what if we said annually in July or August every year, and begin it that way and keep on the same cycle, but with the general understanding, we are about to discuss budget guidance. This is something that is a priority for the town of Hartford. We are going to work toward these goals. Does that sound reasonable? And then the other ones, even the town report, that is one that maybe just for the first year, either the resolution or a written link to the climate action plan in one paragraph that's copied and pasted that even Eric and Jack might help write. Could we keep that deadline in there?
If Eric and Jack came into my office and had a really awesome paragraph or two, and all I had to do was ask, and Jack is probably a creature of my own mind, ask where his supporting documentation is, that would be incredibly helpful, because that's going to be a time where we're just trying to juggle so many things in my office. The idea of trying to draft something that's not entirely in my wheelhouse is incredibly intimidating. So to say, here's the draft for the annual town report. We've got your back, Tracy. Let us walk you through how we reach these numbers and these conclusions, and maybe I'll have some wordsmithing, would be incredibly helpful.
I just want to add that I will also help with the words. They are the tech, but I can help with the words. I'm a writer, so that's another thing. We actually physically could do that. And some of that synthesis, that kind of stuff, those resources are here for volunteers.
I just wanted to add that, so the creature of your own mind comment, I did bring our committee charge, Article 25, and the resolution declaring a climate emergency, just in case anybody had questions. I was prepared.
You have a draft of that already for the town report, right? That Tracy just asked about, right?
Right.
Okay.
And then just one last, and I'm happy to propose the edits if we're ready to that yet, but could we just keep the procurement policy date in there as is with the understanding that we might not reach that deadline?
Yeah, and if we don't reach that deadline, it could be an outside constraint that we just can't anticipate at that time, and that VLCT, our town lawyer that we contract with, that has his own plate of work priorities in his own firm, can't get us those changes and that work soon enough. But the sooner we can get started with that, the longer reach we have for those outside parties that are outside of our control, who we often need to bounce these things off of and get feedback on.
Mike,
hey, I'm happy to support something that changes the dates, but I mean, just looking at it, you could strike every date out of there and still tell you what you need to do. I mean, unless we don't have any faith that, there's going to be a good faith effort to do this, but you can just say, you specify a work sequence, with necessary funding and resources presented to the select board for approval. You can strike clearly every date out. It still tells us exactly what to do, and we don't have to go back and forth on it. I can see that, we may want to have a date in there if we think somehow this is going to get, put on the back burner. I don't know if I share that concern necessarily, but, it's certainly one way to go about doing it.
Thanks, Mike. Russ, go ahead.
I think you need to put some dates in there. I think they need to be realistic because, and I hate to do this, Gate Street, there's been no date set on that. So there is, with a date, there's going to be a call to action. You need some type of date.
Joe, and then let's see if we can wrap this up and get a motion.
And also just Ellie's stand still up, so I don't know if we're going to ask a question.
And to piggyback on to what Russ said, I just think unfortunately this body has had a reputation of kicking cans down the road. So I think at least putting dates on these things can, to a certain extent, hold us accountable to meeting those deadlines and put ourselves at the forefront. So I would be in favor of putting dates. And also the reason I asked about the April time frame is to what Eric said. There is a possibility that you may have 4 new bodies on this board at that time because there's a March election. So I just want to keep that in mind as well. I don't know if that was a thought of yours in putting that date, but that
this is an implementation plan that the town manager and staff and stakeholders will work on, and whatever body's up here will be presented with it. And there is a clear mandate from the town. The select board can vote however they feel it's appropriate with whoever it is.
Wait, does Ali still have a question or a comment?
Yeah, it's actually about this exact thing. So I similarly had questions about April, and I think it may be in the same mind as Joe, just thinking about a new board by that time. And while, yes, I think that whoever the board is could see that new, if it was a new board or some combination of new and remaining members, could take that implementation plan and make, informed decisions on it. But I do think that there's something helpful about this board being able to sort of see that first process through along with Tracy and town staff. So I would opt for, if we are getting specific about amending that December 2021 date, having that be before the March election.
So like a February 28th?
Sure.
Raw team, are we ready?
Well, I mean, what do you think of that? You're the one that has to do it.
How about this? We're going to do the best we can. And if we strike for the moon and we fall, then we'll reach for the stars, and I will apologize profusely, and y'all can.
We'll take the blame. It's all good. Thanks.
Thank you. So I'm hearing a plea for help from the town manager, which I take pretty seriously. I'll just put that out there. I'm up probably to read this, and I'm lost on if we're changing or what we're changing to. And just another comment from a previous town manager. It was noted to don't rush to failure. So I look at this as more of a formality. We approved this at our last meeting, basically. So I think this is more of a formality. But I'm prepared to read it. I just don't know what changes we're actually making. I've heard February, I've heard April. We got the town report question, if that can actually be reasonable. And I need some help.
Yeah, Dennis, I think, did I hear correctly that Ally has this?
It's Ally's turn to make a motion if you would like. And I think
I move forward with that.
Ally, if you're up for that, and I think the recommended amendment to the resolution would be that presented to the select board for approval by the end of February 2022 and annually thereafter. In August. Well, I mean, it's going to affect the next budget cycle one way or another. I don't think we need to change. I think let's pick a month and then it will apply to the next budget cycle. No, yes, no. Or you can, I guess it's fine. I'll let Ally, if you want to make the motion, I'll let you propose.
Well, yeah, now I'm not clear on what I can, unless I just say I don't know exactly what words you used, Kim, but that sounds fine to me. So I can take a stab at it. Do I need to read the entire resolution or just say as written with amendments?
I would like some feedback from anyone from the Climate Action Committee about how critical it was going to be December, and so that's missing the budget cycle. So if we switch it to February to get the board who's familiar with this process the first look at the implementation plan, great. But can't we just do it annually in February, which will everything we discuss and determine affects the upcoming budget cycle. So if we put everything we're going to discuss on the budget in August, it's just going to be too much stuff. Do you have a strong opinion?
Not a strong one. Ultimately, it's your decision. The December date, just for clarification, assumes that that's the final draft. You don't come on December 31st with the first time the board has seen it, right? So, the assumption built into that is by November 1st, you've got a plan that you're then informing the budget cycle with, just because it's a draft, right? And then there's some of, there's back and forth between you and the staff, right? So I guess my advice is that somewhere near the very beginning of the budget cycle, because by then you've done the work of the year and you've drawn down on your funds that you had set aside, you've done X amount of work, you can sort of reset and say, what's our progress? So do that in February. To me, I see what you're saying, but on the other hand, I think it just makes more sense to target somewhere, maybe the end of the fiscal year is your sort of like wrap up, and then you start building the implementation plan for next year. And so by the end of July, end of August, you've got a current plan, current information that takes into account what you just did in the last 12 months, and then you're ready to launch into the budget cycle. But that's, again, not a strong preference, just how I would do it if I were waving magic wands.
You could do February and end of August. It's a 6-month cycle because we're going to close the fiscal year on June 30th, and it usually takes us a good few weeks to actually close the fiscal year. So if you all wanted to go for a February and August cycle, that would allow us to get the party started, so to speak, for February, and then move into a cycle that allows us to close a fiscal year, be able to reflect on that fiscal year, do all of our reporting, and then bring it forth before the budget.
Okay.
Sounds good. Now, do we have to read this whole resolution, or we can just as submitted and change the dates? What?
I think we can get away with
Okay.
adopt the resolution
Yep.
except for, and then just be clear on any of the changes that you want to make. And if all else fails, Lana and I can rewatch this meeting and take down those notes and make sure that we got it all.
Perfect. So Ally, so I think the change would be in that paragraph that now therefore we're changing that date to February, the end of February, and then annually in July.
No, end of August.
End of August?
Okay.
Be a little closer.
End of August. Okay, end of August. Okay.
Sorry, Dan, can you please repeat that? Where are we making changes?
So in this paragraph on the resolution,
Yeah.
where it says now therefore be it resolved, the second paragraph up from the bottom.
Yeah.
So we're going to change the December 2021 date to the end of February 2022, and then annually thereafter by the end of August.
So what date do we put on it? February what?
The end of February, February 28th or 29th, depending if it's leap year or not.
That's going to be biannually? Biannually?
No, annual.
Annually.
We're doing it in August and February.
Just this year, we're doing it in February.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, and is there another one happening here?
Is there another what?
Another change? Or just that one?
Just that one. Yep.
Are you up for that, Ally?
Sure, I will take a stab at it. So, Mr. Chair, I move that the Select Board adopt the proposed resolution implementing the Town of Hartford Climate Action Plan as written, except with the following amendment to paragraph 6 to say, now therefore be it resolved that the Town of Hartford direct the town manager to work with staff and town commissions and committees to develop an implementation plan for priority 1 actions identified in the Town of Hartford Climate Action Plan that specifies a work sequence and timeline for implementation tasks and estimates necessary funding and staffing resources to be presented to the Select Board for approval by the end of February 2022 and annually thereafter at the end, updates to be reported to the Select Board at quarterly intervals.
We missed a piece.
About.
Can I make a friendly amendment? Can I?
Yes.
Yes, please.
So Lana, oh, that is one big sentence, isn't it? Priority 1 actions identified in the Town of Hartford Climate Action Plan that specifies a work sequence and timeline for implementation tasks and estimates necessary funding and staffing resources to be presented to the Select Board for approval by the end of February 2022 and annually thereafter at the end of August, as well as progress updates to be reported to the Select Board at quarterly intervals. Thank you.
Ally, you okay with that?
Sure. I couldn't tell you what the difference was, but that sounds great.
She added in the August annually.
Where?
After what is now February. Same place.
Yes.
The first implementation plan will be presented or approved by the end of February. And then each year thereafter, the implementation plans will be approved, presented and approved at the end of August. So we're only doing it in February, the first year. And then every other year, then we'll get into an end of August cycle for that so that it is congruent with the budget cycle.
Perfect.
So I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Please let there be no other discussion. Okay. So hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 I think that was unanimous. You guys both said yes?
Yeah, I said yes.
Ally, you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So it's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, climate team, for getting us through that. We weathered the storm. Okay, now budget guidance. Thank you, Jack.
All right, so we're back. We're back with budget guidance. I'm gonna admit that I think I literally just changed the date on my budget guidance memo from a couple of weeks ago. This is something that I believe Leo started, which was a conversation that the board had that provided overarching guidance to the staff and me as we get into craft the budget. So we're running late. We were hoping to get this done at the end of August, but other things have come up recently. We kind of got to get this nailed down tonight. One of the things I offered to Dan is to put it up on the big screen, or I take live edits from you all, or you can have a conversation and I can do track changes in a Word document on my machine and kind of help through that conversation. I'm happy to help anyway.
I think the only screen we can get it on is that one, so it might not help.
Oh, that screen is now blank. You're right. Okay.
Well, we'll just do the best we can with what we have. So questions, comments, where do you want to start? Kim, go ahead.
You said that you've done some guidance to the staff already. Can you share with us?
Yeah, I asked them to, especially those that have been before you on a pretty regular basis, to give thought to the things that they've heard in terms of your questions, your concerns, and the things that you've stated are priorities, and to put those in and show us what that looks like in terms of general costing. So additional sidewalk maintenance programs, additional, we're going to give you some information on costing to deal with cemeteries, parking meters, possibly. For fire, we have Station 2, and we are incurring, staffing costs related to that. So being honest about what those staffing costs look like for Station 2. I'm not sure where we're landing with mail-in ballots, but making sure that we have that put in the ballot if that's something that you all want to consider in the forefront. I'd rather have a budget that has these things budgeted for than to have those conversations after the fact that we haven't budgeted for those sorts of things. So I guided staff in saying, if you've heard it and you feel like it's a priority, go ahead and start costing it out. So that way you're not caught behind, because that's kind of the deep end of the work, is looking at what would that look like? What are the resources that we would need for that? And what does that look like when they're reflected in our budget? And each one of those things can be partially encapsulated, and sometimes can't, because we need to talk about staffing and staff and benefits costs. So that's the casual guidance that I've given staff, is to say, let's show the board what these things look like. And they're really the experts when it comes to costing out programs or priorities.
Dennis, go ahead.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I may have mentioned it before, but what would help me a lot is that there's some stuff we have to do, we don't have a choice on. So I don't even need to take for me, I don't need to take time to hear about that stuff, because it's just, we have to do it. But then there's going to be some projects that are in the horizon, that some things we may want, and then we can pick and choose from that list of what we want to do. So that's what would help me anyways, is once we figure out what we don't have a choice on, eliminate that from our discussion, because I don't think we have a choice, to some more, probably new equipment, maintenance, whatever it might be. We may have a choice on that. So that type of list would help me a lot.
This is a really high level guidance document, and you're going to get really deep presentations by each of the departments. So, as you can see from the previous ones, it's really kind of values driven and 3,000 foot. So that could be a piece of guidance for how we structure the presentations, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
When I look at this budget guidance memo, one of the things that sticks out to me is the third bullet item, maintain a long-term focus 15, 20, 50 years out. I don't know how you can possibly do such a thing with the boards changing as often the boards are, and with climate emergencies that we're having. Hope we never have another Irene comes through here again. But what I would like to see that I mentioned before is to pull that back in a little bit. And I would like to see us focus on a citizen-led decisions, because I still maintain that if we could get the voice of the citizen in a survey to guide us, you wouldn't have the boards making the decisions or having to worry about making the decisions. You would have the citizens driving what they want to spend their taxpayer dollars on. And I'm not sure how we would initiate that, but it is so important to me that we capture the voice of the citizen on where they want to see the town go, versus the 7 members of this board that can change every 2 or 3 years. And whether we want to admit it or not, every single one of us up here has a bias towards one particular thing or other, whether we want to admit that. And we really need to focus on the voice of the customer. And the voice of the customer is the citizen of the town of Hartford. So we got to reel that in 15, 20, 25, 50 years out. A board is never able to do that. You're not able to do that. We need to make that a little bit more realistic, and we need to focus on the voice of the customer. If you could include in this the voice, hear the voice of the customer. And I'm not sure how we can do that, but the voice of the customer is so important in business and in municipal governments, because we have to satisfy the citizens of the town of Hartford. We're not going to get reelected if we don't satisfy the citizens of the town of Hartford. We can satisfy a small handful of them, right? And you may get those people out to vote for us again. But if you can get a board that is satisfying the needs of the citizens, that's an ideal board. That's what you want. And we want to satisfy the needs. And so that would be my biggest input to this, is to satisfy the needs of the customer. And I think it was Kim that made the statement that, I'm not sure if it's marketing or whatever that we have, but we need to have some value that plays towards capturing that voice of the citizen and bring it back to us. Am I making sense at all? You hear?
I hear what you're saying.
You know, because that way boards don't have to make, it leaves the decision off the boards. It takes away from us. It says, well, no, it's big for that.
Joe, go ahead.
We are in a democracy. And a democracy in its essence is that the citizens vote us in to be their representatives. It is incumbent upon us individually, that's the 7 people up here, to go out to their constituency. Now, we cannot do it but to go out in their constituency and find out what their needs and goals are. I agree with you that they are our customer. There are some bigger issues that, yes, we need to put on a ballot when we're deadlocked on something, we cannot make it necessarily a decision, and we think that that is. But for the most part, they elected us to make those decisions for us. And if we make the wrong decisions, you're right in the fact that they will vote us out. And I have been a proponent of that. If they don't like something that I do, they have mechanisms of email and in March of this year to vote me out. And they'll tell you, but my belief is that they have put me, you, and the rest of this board here to make those decisions for them. You're all, and you're always going to get people who disagree on a particular decision and who agree with you on particular decision. But for the most part, they have entrusted us to make those decisions for them. And that's my feeling on what we do. If we as individuals want to poll the community, we can do that. But I don't agree with the fact that we should, as a town, poll the community. They have put us here to make those decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Yes.
So you're not wrong, but I don't think you're entirely right either. Because the only way to make change, the only way to drive change is to know where you started from and where you're getting to, okay? And if you do a survey now and collect the voice of the customer, and then you do a survey 3 years down the road and collect the voice of the customer, if you're going in the right direction, you're gonna know about it. Will you know about that if you get reelected or if you don't get reelected? I don't believe you will. But if you capture the voice of the customer through Six Sigma, the only way you can to get any traction is to know how well you've improved. The only way to capture how well we've improved is by getting that voice of that customer, not by being reelected. It's a matter of how we perform or how the town performs for the citizens of the town of Hartford. Tell me how we can get that data, because we've got it right in here that says, you know, we're data driven, okay? How are we going to collect that data unless we do surveys of our customers?
I think, Joe, I mean, I have to agree with Joe. I think I disagree with you, Lanny. I think that we have that information. We have people that come here every time that we meet. We have people, I can't tell you the thousands of emails that I've replied to. So I think we have that impact, but I don't want this discussion to focus on that. I want us to focus on what we're doing here, which is the budget guidance. So let's sort of bring it back in that direction. And, you know, we've shared those comments, which if you think are appropriate, great. And if you don't, either way. But I think that we need to sort of focus on how we're going to move this budget guidance forward. Other questions or comments on what you'd like to see? Dennis.
Thank you again. Yeah, I didn't study this before and it may be in here, but I can't see where it is. I know in the past I've just suggested that we put a priority on maintaining what we have before we buy something new, and that
It's there.
where I'm missing in the 2021.
Yeah, resist buying new until we have taken care of what we have.
Yeah.
Set the first set of bullet points, second from the.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay.
I'm hearing about this talk about survey and whatnot, and I was here when we implemented the last survey, which turned out to be a disaster. The questions I don't think were necessarily the best. The distribution of it was awful. A lot of it went into junk mail, people's junk mail. And so response was low. We really ramped it up with an ad campaign to try to drive numbers up, but I'm not going down that path. And furthermore, I don't think we have time to even entertain it anyways. It's too late to be considered for this. So that would be my highest priority, is taking care of what we have before we think about buying them. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. Kim, go ahead.
Yeah, there's, I mean, again, I'm sort of looking to you for, I mean, I think this is a little perfunctory, but it is kind of nice to have that, the 30,000 or 3,000 foot view. I think with that in mind, and knowing that Tracy is giving staff like reasonable direct guidance as well. I mean, I might just basically modify the first line that says recognizes and limits environmental impact to say something along the lines with is in keeping with the adopted climate action plan goals or something like that. I don't know what I didn't write
Yeah.
that down before.
What I'm doing is I just have a Word document with track changes on. So when you all say something, I can see that it's a change, but I also can write it down.
Okay, thank you.
I like what Kim just said, and the previous guidance is, I think, good with that change that Kim just mentioned. And I mean, we worked very hard on this, and I like it. And now we've got CAP involved, and I think that's all it needs.
Anyone else?
It's good to me.
All right, then we'll entertain a motion. Ally,
Do you want to take a comment?
do you have a comment on this? Okay, go ahead.
Nope, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Ally.
I'd like to get back to the town people's input. I think town people do have a right to put their input in to the budget plan.
Absolutely. Always, which is why you come here and you share your concerns in any
I
format.
think we should have a mail-out survey to have our voices heard. We have a right to have a voice heard.
Absolutely.
Yes, we voted every single one of you people in, whether it was our selected choice voted in or not.
Correct.
But I also think that the people voted in should take the opportunity to hear what we all have to say
And we have many formats for that, yeah.
before you make your choices.
Okay.
Because there's 10,000 plus, is that what you said the last meeting, Tracy?
A little
Our
over
current
10,000.
population is 10,646.
Okay, that's more than 7 of you.
Yes,
That is a lot more than 7 individual people.
right. But people have many ways to get in touch with us. You can come to a
Okay,
meeting, you
but
can email.
The
you
last
can-
survey for the climate action program, a lot of people didn't get that survey.
Right, so it wasn't a very effective method.
Exactly.
Right.
Mail it out.
So
It goes to every single address.
we know a lot of the addresses that are in town are not accurate, as we've seen from the ballots that went out.
The
It's a
majority are.
huge expense. Actually, there's a significant number that came back. So it's a huge expense for the town. I think that people have ways to communicate with us. You're here tonight, you can tell all your people, they can email us, they can call, they can be here. We have plenty of opportunities, I think, for people to reach out to us without a
A
survey.
lot of people, elderly, they are not on, they're not,
They don't
a
have to
lot of
be.
them do not have computer, a lot of them do not have Facebook, a lot of them are homebound.
Yeah.
They are getting their mail.
Yeah, that's fine. So they can call us, they can
Put it
write
in
to
the
us, they can do
budget.
different things. Yeah. That's a recommendation that we can take under consideration. Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you. Kim.
Well, just to respond, it is not possible to do now. Like if it were going to be budgeted at all, it would be in the 22-23 budget.
We're talking about fiscal years 23. So starting
for
July
the-
1st, 2022.
Right. So it's not something that, if it is something that is going to happen, it would be we need to propose it in this budget cycle. The select board and the voters would need to approve that budget, and then we could do it after July 1st, 2022.
Would you like me to volunteer to do the project and to pay for it? I will.
I don't think we can do that. I mean, there's been a couple of big things that over the years, we had difficult decisions to make, and we did put it to the voters.
I don't have a problem.
Anyway, I'll stop there, sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Aaron Krauss, Hartford. You've heard a lot from me, so I'll make this quick. Every year I try to commit to showing up to budget meetings, and I do a horrible job of it. So I just wanted to say tonight that I encourage, well, I'm going to try harder, and I encourage my fellow citizens to do the same. It used to be that there was a floor meeting, and everyone could hash all this stuff out. And then you had your real-time feedback, right? And we went to Australian ballot, and we as voters voted up or down, right? And it gets presented during budget and candidates night, but by that time, you've spent hundreds of hours on it, and it's really well baked, and citizens can comment on it, but it's really not very effective. It's like, well, what are we going to change at this point in time, right? So I think it's incumbent on all of us really to take advantage of all of the meetings that are part of the budget cycle. And I'm guilty of not doing that very effectively, but I think we all can, should try to do our part, and that's where the input comes, right? Each of those meetings. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
I admit I have not been to one of your listening sessions because I have another board meeting that night. But why not plan a very specific listening session about the budget and publicize it that way? Make it clear that the purpose of this particular meeting is to hear comments about town services, taxes, and what you would like to see. And that way, you've made it very clear you're soliciting public output.
Thanks,
Input. It's like-
Yes, it is. Okay, does someone want to make a motion?
We need one?
Well, it says we do.
Recap the.
Yeah, and the only substantial change I have is changing recognizes and limits environmental impact to is in keeping with the climate action plan. I did hear some light information, Lanny, about like long-term focus, 15, 20, 50 years out. I hear you on that one. 50 years out, I'm going to be 92. If I'm sitting at this chair, we've all messed it all up. So I hear you on that like that kind of does ask a lot of the staff to think that far out. But I didn't hear a direct change on that one.
I just want to, can I just say a quick word about that? I think that what that objective was is that when we're doing some big capital improvement, whether it's, matching funds for a bridge or the pool or WABA or Maxfield, like how is that we're gonna pay for it for 30 years. How is the town gonna benefit from it for 25, 30, 50 years? So I think that was sort of the goal of that in that line. It wasn't like, what do we want to do in our town in 50 years? It was like, how do the things that we do today impact the town in 50 years?
Just looking at the big picture,
Mhm.
the overall, yeah.
Yeah.
I like it in regards to what you just said.
Further questions I have is increase the budget by no more than 3%. In my memo, I did let you all know that construction costs rise on average of 5%. I don't even know what we've seen in the last 16 months. So that budget, that piece of guidance does conflict with many of the things that we've heard about increasing services and increasing things. So that's definitely food for thought in terms of, is that a hard and fast number, or do you want me to run some projections on what different things would look like and how they would affect the budget, which is a little bit more work, but also could be a more robust discussion when you come into these special budget meetings with departments.
Joe and then Kim, yeah.
I would, so we can make an informed decision, particularly since last year we asked the departments to be flat. And they stuck to that. I know that you made the comment, it was flat last year, but it went up, in essence, 3%, and then another 3%. I'm sorry that I'm not close to the mic. So that would help us. I mean, any information that would help us make informed decisions is always a good thing.
And go ahead. I mean, I would just add that in light of the affordability crisis and the property taxes, I think maybe some will be offset with grand list increases to some extent.
That is a question for the one and only Joe Turner, who's
Yeah.
not here with us tonight, but I did swing by his office earlier last week and asked if he and Christina, who are an amazing team, could run some different projection scenarios and also look at what different budget levels would look like. So they're working on starting to make those projections, some of which they're able to make strong educated guesses on, some of which they're going to make less educated hypotheses on.
I mean, with the understanding that the economy is doing what it's doing, supply chain demand is doing what it's doing. I think it's still reasonable to aim for a goal of 3% in terms of just a cost of living standard increase, and understand that the circumstances are currently might not meet that. But
And I like your, sorry, to me cut you off, sorry.
no,
And I like the idea of maybe having a couple different scenarios so we could see like the 3%, which is sort of the cost of living increase. And then that's really what it gets us, and yet would need a 6% and 8% to sort of maintain the services and do these next couple projects that we've talked about, just so we have some, just a couple different things to look at to see what the options would be. Dennis?
Thanks again. Yeah, the higher that number goes, the more likely it's possible that the budget would be turned down. But, if cost of living has gone up 3% or whatever, and we keep it at 3%, we've actually got less of a budget overall because there's fixed costs that are going to go up. There's employee raises and insurance increases and so on. And so, we've discussed this before about biting the bullet and coming up with a bigger number there, and actually getting ahead of the game. But then we face, like I said, the risk of the whole thing getting turned down. So it's a real balance act there.
Others? Right, we'll entertain a motion.
Do you all want to leave the detailed guidance such as reduce salt budget when possible without reducing public safety? Do you want to fund a study of flood preparedness? Those are kind of the ones that I think have hung out for a number of years, and those are the ones that sometimes trip up staff in that they're hanging out, and we're not really sure if that's a current priority. So if you want an analysis of public safety call volume, like we need to know that because it's not an in-house thing.
The salt thing, I think I brought that up before, that we did reduce it, but we're not talking about reducing it more. And it would maybe be good to know if the reduction is working. This was a Becca thing a few years ago.
I think we can take that out, but if we have an update on where we are, that might be nice just to know if it's working or whatever. But I don't think it has to be a budget guidance is what I'm hearing.
It was 500 tons less or something?
Yeah.
Would you like a study of flood preparedness?
I mean, I think this is a long-term goal that could be in a phase 2 or 3 of the climate action plan or hazard mitigation plan. I mean, I think these are the kinds of things that help us address the adaptability and resilience of the community in the face of climate change. And so take it out of the budget guidance, okay, but I still think it's something that the town of Hartford should have in our data sets to some extent.
Sounds like a resilience question, for that committee to work on.
Right, or the Regional Planning Commission, or some kind of, funding through the ARPA or the infrastructure.
So maybe not a priority for this year's operating budget.
Fine, especially not in detailed guidance.
Right. Okay. Anybody?
Lana, can I do it this way? I move, oh, sorry, it's your turn, Dennis. Go.
I need help if I'm going to do that because we're striking things, but I'm sorry, I didn't know what we're changing.
I have one more question. Do you want my staff to consider engaging with a firm such as the National Community Survey to conduct a community survey? That's a money thing. So if that's gonna come up again and again, I would need to put it in the budget. It's not an in-house thing.
And we could explore the.
That's one of the things that's sitting here.
It would be interesting to know what they could come up with. There is real value in statistical data you get from surveys. If anybody that's in a quality management goal understands that you need to have statistics to drive quality, and you have to have it.
I can also provide an updated town managing report by just emailing Polico, which is the kind of forefront of these types of programs, and see what that would cost for us to do that work. And it might be something we can bear, and it might be something that we can't bear.
Yep, sounds good.
Let me add that to my to-do list. Does anybody want to see my screen, which has the edited copy for your motion?
Is there even a motion needed? I mean, there's a guy.
Well, it says on here that we have a motion, so that's why I was.
We don't have to.
We don't have to.
But I think I've got it.
You think you got it?
Y'all
Then that's
trust
fine.
my wordsmithing
Yeah.
skills.
That
And
was just discussion.
I can always send it out and just let you all reply to me and Dan and Joe if I didn't capture these edits.
If we're happy without a motion, that's fine. Good. Thank you. Okay, commission meeting reports. Let me start this side this time. So Dennis, want to go first?
Yes, thank you. I met with the the Hartford Conservation Commission here week ago Monday. Just update, they're still working on the logging in the town forest. They're still working on getting bids. They've been working with the tech center on getting, they've granted permission for them to do some work up there and use the town forest. The White River Partnership is having a fall cleanup event on 9/11. They'll be collecting trash and tires, and they're supposed to have some information on that listed in the listserv soon. I haven't seen it that I know of. Hopefully they get onto that. They also, the same group, I guess, teamed up with the tech center and cleaned up some River Road trash and got permission from the landowner, I think Daniel's Transportation. So that's a great thing. And on 10/16, October 16th, they're going to have the fall, the Hurricane Hill 5 or 10K run, however aggressive you are. And there's talk about putting the hurricane forest in land conservation. And they're also still working with the Upper Valley Mountain Bike Association. They're trying to come up with a contract that's agreeable to both parties. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Dennis. Lanny, anything?
Nothing, sir.
Okay, Joe?
Nope, thank you.
Mike?
I met with the Climate Action Committee last week. They just basically discussed the resolution that we discussed tonight. So nothing else.
Kim?
Hartford Revolving Loan Fund Committee met September 1st, last Wednesday, and they're finalizing this brochure. So basically they have funds that they're eager to loan, and they discuss loan rates and existing loans. And so they're basically marketing their available funds. So if there are small businesses in the town of Hartford that would like a very low interest Hartford Revolving Loan Fund, contact GMEDC or town hall or me, and I'll give you the information.
Thanks, Kim. Allie, do you have anything?
Yeah, I do. I'm going to keep my video off because my internet's a little funky, but Resilient Hartford coming up this Thursday. The Clifford Park Food Forest folks are doing a design presentation that's going to be this Thursday, 6:30 p.m. Town hall as well as on Zoom. And that's their kind of final presentation on the weeks of meetings that they've had with their team and community members to design the park. So they're going to be sharing what they've come up with, which is very exciting. And then they're actually going to be starting to plant some trees at Clifford Park on September 18th. So that's very exciting. Ad hoc Committee on Emergency Shelter. We got a lot of really useful information from Tom Peltier, our town fire marshal, and next steps for the RV kind of proposal to the Planning Commission would be to establish a safety checklist for RVs. So Tom has been helping us think about the best way to go about doing that. And then Corey, the committee approved some final revisions to the Declaration of Equity, Inclusion, and Justice for the town of Hartford that I believe has been mentioned in previous meetings. So that should be coming up on an agenda for select board review sometime in the near future, as well as some work that the policy working group has been working on in terms of making recommendations to the board to specifically, again, kind of dig into policy review of the town to forward some of the goals of the strategic plan for equity and inclusion. And two more things. Hava Armstrong Walter is now Corey's additional new school board rep, along with, of course, Russ North. And since Eileen Swinkowski's departure from the committee, we are looking for new committee members. So folks who are interested in being involved in Corey can reach out to, I would say, John Hall or Sarah Campbell if they're interested in putting their hat in the ring for that.
Thanks, Ally.
I just want to make a quick invitation on behalf of the school board. And by the way, I'm the liaison in case I started showing up again. But we're having a community engagement meeting on the 22nd, and it will be another part of the equity and inclusion training that is suggested by the strategic plan. And we want to extend an invitation to all of you and Tracy if you want to attend the meeting. Of course, depending on the numbers, you have to coordinate with the superintendent to see if we have to warn it as a joint meeting or that kind of thing.
Thank you.
Thanks, Russ. Will you send me an email? Thank you.
And then you'll send it to us, please.
Definitely, because it's 10 o'clock at night.
Or I can send it to all of you.
Even better.
Please don't
Perfect.
reply off.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good. Okay, great.
What
So
time is that?
would be 6 o'clock on the 22nd.
Where?
It'll either be, I think it's going to be here and on Zoom. As I get more details, I will continue, but at least this way it's on your calendar, so you can arrange it.
perfect. Thank you. All right, consent agenda.
Me? Okay. Would anyone else like to make?
Is it you?
You can, Joe and I usually trade off, but by all means, if you would like to.
I think Joe likes it so much, I'm gonna let him go.
But it's Kim's turn, so whatever.
Well, let Kim do it then. I don't care.
All right, if no one objects, Mr. Chair,
Absolutely not.
I move that the select board approve payroll ending September 4, 2021, meeting minutes of 8/24, 2021, and the AP manifests of September 3rd and September 7th, 2021, and the meeting dates of October 5th, October 12th, October 19th, and October 26th, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
Go ahead.
Dennis, we'll give it to Dennis this time. Any discussion, comments? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Perfect. Okay, unanimous. Thank you. So,
Aye.
perfect. Kim, Dennis. Oh, sorry. What you look at me like you didn't, sorry. Okay.
Just wait for the next one.
Okay, so now we'll entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to move in accordance with Vermont's open meeting law requirements. The select board will enter into executive session to discuss confidential attorney-client communications made for the purposes of providing professional legal services to the body. Title 313A1F.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mike. Thank you. Okay, so we'll go into executive session